This is Matt Brown, and you're listening to Just a Good Conversation. I'm a photographer who's always looking at photo bylines. I want to know who's making those great photos. In the middle of Montana, in the tackle shop, I found Jessica Haydahl Richardson. Don't let the sweet Canadian accent fool you. She is one of the most competitive photographers in the business. A wonderful and talented commercial photographer shooting everything from landscapes, product photography, travel, and wildlife. And of course, if you talk to a true Canadian, you're going to end up talking about hockey.
I kind of changed as a player. I used to be an insanely offensive player, and I think everybody's really, really good. And then all the really good players get to college. And then you're then in amongst a bunch of really good players. And then you kind of settle into where you belong. And I ended up becoming a third line checker, which was needed. And it was my part. And I just played my part.
I'm Matt Brown, host of Just a Good Conversation. Take a listen to our archives. My guests have ranged from world-class chefs, Silver Star recipients, pro baseball players, sports writers, and University of Kentucky athletic photographer, Chet White.
Now everything's here today, gone tomorrow. Back then it's like, you took your time taking one picture, because sometimes you didn't have very many left. So it helped me kind of learn how to look through a viewfinder. And though I didn't know it then, but to make an image. I think film helps you do that. It helps you make an image, not just take a picture. I think you're a little bit more thoughtful using film, and it's a great way to learn.
You can hear the rest of my conversation with Chet on our archives at justagoodconversation.com. Let's take a quick break for a sponsor before diving into my conversation with Jessica Haydahl Richardson. I've got a Canadian living in Montana who, by the way, is a world-class hockey player. How are you, Jessica?
I'm good, but I don't know about world class. My goodness. I didn't make it to the Olympics or anything.
No. Okay, I know this podcast could jump into any conversation. We're going to go right into hockey. I've got your stats up. You played 130.
Oh, my dear Lord.
Yes, 130.
You found those?
Oh, yeah. It's the best part of the podcast is research. 132 consecutive games.
Yeah.
I never
missed a single
woman.
game. If they had that for women in NCAA, I would have gotten an award, I guess. I never missed a single game throughout my entire hockey career. Thank you. Actually, that's like the one thing I'm maybe proud of from my entire hockey career was that I played college hockey and I got injured a lot and I managed to play through all of it.
Young lady, that is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I don't care if you go off and have 12 kids, adopt another dozen, playing in 132 hockey games. That's nails.
Yeah, and over 4 years of college and graduating with a degree and traveling and schoolwork and also being like 20-something years old and figuring it all out. It was a lot.
Yeah. Okay, so 24 goals, 18 assists.
Yeah, I mean,
Walk me through your first college goal.
Oh gosh.
I bet you didn't think the podcast was going this way. Well,
no, and trying to recall, can you tell the listeners that I'm turning 40 this year? I'm not ashamed to say it, but I mean, that was like 20 something years ago.
Yes, yes, it was.
Just a preference. Generally how Division I women college hockey works. If you are not in the Olympics, you're in college hockey, or you're at Harvard and you're on the Olympic team. Neither of that, I wasn't on the Olympic team, but, I trained my entire youth to get a scholarship to play college hockey. That was my focus in life. And, it feels like so long ago because it really was so long ago, but,
freshman year, 2002, 2003.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago. But my first goal, my goodness.
Walk me through your first
goal. It was maybe
goal.
Niagara University. I don't know if I can even remember the first goal. I probably have the puck here. I have like memorabilia. Does it say what it was? Was it Niagara University?
I went
Elmira
I got through
Niagara?
I went through box scores, everything. November 11th, 2003 versus Niagara. Second period.
It was Niagara. So Niagara was Niagara University in New York. They, for some reason, I had my best games against them. They actually offered me a hockey scholarship and a soccer scholarship because I played soccer for 14 years, and they offered me a dual scholarship, and then they kind of like dinked me around a little bit when it came time to like signing, and I walked away from it. And then Wayne State University kind of chased me down. I was in Norway at the time, visiting family, and they called me and they faxed an agreement there and I signed it while I was in Norway. So I actually had a year break in between high school and college hockey because I had a very bad injury in between. I actually got kicked in the face in soccer and broke my cheekbone. And had a really bad concussion and a long recovery, but it was right when you were in Canada at the time, scouting wasn't the same like it is now.
Oh yeah.
And scouting isn't the same as it is in the US. Like it was harder out of British Columbia to get plucked into the US system. If you're in Ontario, or Quebec, it was easier because you were so much more you were probably driving to Michigan to play those girls, or you were driving to Idaho or New York. Like you were playing in that circuit and people knew of you. But out of BC, it's so small. And so I had a really bad injury that kept me out of all the scouting games for the year 2001. So I finished, it was my senior year of high school. I got, it was just a bad injury. And, so I actually made it onto the NWHL team we had in Vancouver, which they didn't pay you, but it was still the NHL for women. So it was cool. And you didn't really travel that much. There weren't a lot of teams to play.
That's badass to say that my mom was a hockey player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dog mom, so I tell them all that nobody listens to me, and I'm not the boss. So, yeah, so I just the hockey. Gosh, so Niagara just for some reason was the team that I did really well. Unfortunately, we had a coach swap my second year of college, so I wasn't the new coach's player, and I kind of changed as a player. I used to be an insanely offensive player, and I think everybody's really, really good. And then all the really good players get to college, and then you're then in amongst a bunch of really good players. And then you kind of settle into where you belong. And I ended up becoming a third line checker, which was needed. And it was my part. And I just played my part. And, at that point, getting a free education,
right.
Free housing, free education, living in Michigan. I mean, it was not a bad situation.
It could have been worse.
Yeah, and I'd like to have contributed more. But again, once you have a coach and you're not that coach's player anymore, you're not going to get pulled up to be the main. He wants all his people to be the main players. But anyways, needless to say, the whole program got cut years later. The coach got fired. So, I mean, alumni still calls me, but I refuse to donate to a school that cut my program. So
yeah, that's not going to help. But
no,
132. That is pretty badass to hang your hat on, young lady.
A lot of games, man. That was a lot of games, and it was cool. And for me in college, I did 7 years of post-secondary education in total, between photography and I have a business degree. But, I think that hockey, being my main focus for my childhood, my teenage years, all I did was train and play sports. That's all I did. And I think I needed that focus for education because that was not my strong suit. I'm dyslexic, and not just like when people say dyslexic, I'm like really dyslexic.
I'm in that
and
boat
I struggle
with you.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I struggle from reading comprehension, just really struggled at math, really struggled at clock reading. I mean, you name it, and there was a struggle associated with it. So my entire educational component was a lot of work. And when we got a C-, my whole family would celebrate because that was exciting. And in college, I ended up doing a lot better. That format actually worked for me a lot better. I feel like you have study hours, you have maybe almost a little less help at times, where by the time I was in high school, people were assigned to me. I had someone in class assigned to me.
Yeah. And
it was kind of like, oh, Jess, I'll just read this for you and you can get it done. So I feel like by the time I got to college, yes, there was resources, but I had to kind of decide to make choices on my own and really buckle down. And so anyways, hockey, I think, was the structure I needed to get everything done. And I wasn't a party kid or anything like that. And I know I look crazy and all, but I was not. That wasn't my main focus. It was playing sports was my main focus.
What was it like growing up for you in British Columbia?
I had the best childhood, honestly. I have two incredible parents. I have three siblings, and my parents are senior, like really old. My dad's 90, my mom's 80. So my mom, if she listens, Mom, sorry, you're not really old. Dad is really old though. That's 90's really old.
Mom still got a little spring in her step.
Oh, Mom's cruising. I gave her a Garmin watch a couple years ago, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm hitting like 15,000 steps a day." And I was like, "What? Okay, it must be broken. When I come home next to visit, I'll get you all lined up here." Well, I get home, I calibrate it, I'm checking things, and then I just start like observing her, and I'm like, no, she's legit doing like 13 to 15,000 steps every day. Meanwhile, I'm trying to hit 8 to 10 on my watch.
Wow.
I think I was at like 4,000 yesterday. So, yeah, Mom is just cruising and doing her thing. But yeah, growing up on the West Coast, my dad was a tugboat captain for 47 years. So I grew up on the water. I grew up, on boats, running boats. I used to run whale watching tours, in my early 20s there. And, I have a captain's license.
Do you really?
Yeah. And so I used to run 30-foot rigid hull inflatables with like 12 stadium style seating, like guests would be in front, and we'd go look at cool things and play in wake. And I was too young to be riding or driving a boat that powerful as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I mean, growing up in Vancouver, it's definitely not the city I grew up in now. It's very busy. My parents don't live in our childhood home anymore. They've moved. So, it's just the city's different. And I get home every other month. I try to be there because my dad is quite elderly and in poor health. So try to get there a lot. Try to see everybody. I'm always there at Christmas. About a 13-hour drive from here. So it's really not too bad.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but British Columbia, my heart is Pacific Northwest, honestly, like ferns, green forest, old man beard, however you say it. Like, and when you say that to people here in Montana, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's a type of moss. I'm like, trust me, it's a type of moss.
Yeah, I'm not into old men with beards.
Yeah, not green old men beards, but yeah. And so I miss that. When I go, thankfully, I'm close enough to home that I get that fill. And I love Montana for very different reasons, but growing up in Vancouver was an incredible childhood. I spent so much time on the water and exploring and have friends with boats. And, you were always doing something and there was always somewhere to go.
Right. Having your dad a tugboat captain, did that, I don't want to say harden you, but did it make you not so soft? Because like you literally got to be on the sea with dad, and it's not a easy thing to be moving stuff around.
Well, so by the time I came around, I'm the youngest of the children, and I have a brother. So I'm turning 40, and I have a brother that's like 60. Gosh, I can't remember his age right now. 65.
Are you
so like I have? Yeah, I'm the miracle child.
Yeah.
Miracle. And so he's my half brother. And then I have two older sisters, and my one sister and I are fairly close in age. And then I have another sister who's just 5 years older than me or something. But, so by the time I came around and I was in diapers, my dad actually transferred to be in the harbor. So he was in the harbor. He wasn't gone for 7-8 days at a time. And he worked for C-SPAN, which is now owned by the Washington Corporation. And the Washington Corporation actually owned all the trains here in Montana. They're from Montana, I believe. They own a lot of the trains and I think some tug companies in Seattle. They own a bunch of tug companies in Vancouver. They're a big corporation now. And so when my dad moved back into the harbor, he was, everything from like hauling tugs up the river system, assisting cruise ships, assisting freighters into port, that kind of stuff. So my dad then was on a 2-week on, 2-week off schedule. So he was home almost every night.
Well, that's good.
But the cool thing was, if mom was a teacher, so she couldn't just like leave school if my dad got a call saying he had to go in. So my dad would call up our elementary school, swing by and grab us. And then we'd head out to the tug and got to hang out on the tug while he's trying to like in storms, while he's trying to like lash ropes, and we're playing with all the mics and stuff. And, it was pretty cool. A few years later, after, the company was purchased, they changed all the restrictions and they changed all the, all the red tape stuff to say that's not safe. And they quickly didn't allow minors to be on board without a secondary adult that was not a captain in charge, basically.
Right.
So we didn't get to go on the tugs as much after that. But
I can always see you guys running about in a boat and your dad's at high seas and you're just like, hey, this is so much fun.
My dad's Norwegian and, always never lost his Norwegian accent and immigrated to Canada in 1954, I believe it was. And so never lost his accent. No one could ever understand him. No one ever called him by his actual Norwegian name because they could never pronounce it. So,
what is it?
It's Sverre.
Okay.
So it's Sverre. He's named after a king of Norway, Sverre. And everybody calls him Sam.
Because I saw the video you did, the captain. And in there.
That's my dad.
Yeah. And in there, I think it says Sam.
Says Sam, because they call him Captain Sam.
Right.
So that was my dad. I made a little video about him. I'm glad I made it when I did because my dad actually has aphasia, which is what Bruce Willis just got diagnosed with.
Okay.
I don't wish it upon anybody. It's pretty terrible. You lose your ability to verbally communicate through a series of strokes, basically. So my dad can no longer speak. So I am literally a year from that video, he could not really communicate with us anymore.
Wow.
So I'm just so really glad. Like I've been meaning to do that for a really long time or document something. And I have lots of photos of him, but I'm not I wouldn't consider myself to be like a filmmaker specifically. So I'm just really grateful that we did something. And he talked through some stuff. I mean, I know all the stories and he's talked through them for years, but just getting his voice recorded meant a lot to us and to my family and stuff. So
it's a beautiful piece. You could definitely tell you weren't hired to do it for somebody.
No.
Right? It was your dad, it could have been maybe your uncle, but it was very endearing and touching the way it was done.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I also then made like a short little film years back, maybe 3-4 or before COVID, that made it into the IF4 or something, one of the fishing tours. And it's a little 3-minute film and it talks about my first fishing memory. And then I'm talking about my dad in that. So, it's tough. Seeing parents get older, it's part of it. It's probably a little easier for me because I am so removed from it. And then when I go home, I'm not around it every day where my siblings are around it. But dad's still cruising. He cannot walk anymore. He is in a wheelchair, but in Canada, not to get into social economics, but having healthcare there, my mom has assistance and he's able to be home because of that. So they get carriers that come in 3 times a day and it's all basically covered by the Canadian government. And that allows him to still be home, which is amazing that he can at least be home. He's watching a lot of Westerns, which actually I didn't realize how racist Bonanza was. I sat down and watched it with him one day and I was like, oh, this is bad. How is this still on TV? And so there's like Journeyman or something. There's like all these different.
The Rifleman, the Journeyman.
The Rifleman, that's it. Not Journeyman. That would be weird, like a plumber and a electrician. Rifleman. Oh my God. So he watches all these Westerns and the whole time I'm like, this is shocking. How is this on TV?
It was the 60s, They weren't going to hire.
Really wasn't. It wasn't a long time ago.
No, they weren't going to hire Native Americans to do it, so they just took some.
And it's
white guy.
It is all blackface. Yeah, it's all blackface. It is shocking. I mean, it's kind of like, oh my God. So, anyways, he watches his Westerns.
Because that's interesting. Of all the things that your dad could be watching right now. It's American TV Westerns.
Yeah. I think, when my father came to North America, he actually came into Ellis Island in New York as a tourist. So he didn't come in as a immigrant there. He made his way to North Dakota. There's a lot of Norwegians in North Dakota. We have a lot of family there. And then he eventually ended up in British Columbia because he had a job set up to log. So this all happened within a year timeline. my father changed our last name from Haydahl, O with a dash through it, to Haydahl. And I think he did that because he wanted to, in the 50s, basically, integrate into society a little bit easier.
Right.
He could have left it as an O. I always asked him, why don't you just leave it as an O, Haydahl, that way? So he changed it, and I think that was just part of it. You did everything, you could just to be a part of society at that time. And he never draw that accent though.
No, that's never going to leave him at that point.
No, and so many people, like everybody would just stare at me. They're like, what did he say? And I'm like, what? How do you not understand him? He's not even talking that fast. So, and then my mother immigrated from Holland in 1952, I believe. And that was post World War III. Oh my goodness. Sorry.
It's just one balloon, Jessica. Don't get
Sorry, it's just a balloon. It's a balloon over Montana. I've got, my brain is all scrambled right now.
Let's not spread rumors on the fishing podcast.
Gosh, that's terrible. That's terrible. I'm very well educated. I'm sorry. World War II. Canada was offering open immigration for people in different countries. And my family from Holland had lost everything during the war. And so they actually, as a group, came over into Montreal on a ship and spread out through Canada. I have a couple cousins here and there.
Wow.
So my mom has no accent, though, because she was quite young.
Okay, so yeah, that's a difference. Dad still carried his thick and wasn't going to let go. Mom had
Dad was like
idea.
21.
Yeah.
Mom was like, my mom would have been 10 years younger than him. And so she had no accent, and Dad was like 21 and thick accent. And my parents are multilingual, like can speak many different languages, and they never taught us any.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I took Norwegian language lessons, and in Canada you take French, and I just was awful at all of it. So I'm going to blame that on dyslexia.
Yeah,
I'll blame it on
That's what I did.
I had a hard enough time with English. World War III, apparently. So,
right, yeah. World War III, B's and D's flipping. It didn't matter.
Yeah. So anyways.
You discover photography in high school.
Yeah.
Right? Like that starts to become like a little bit of a thing.
I think that when you're dyslexic, I mean, really, it's crazy. I don't mean to talk about it so much, but I recently just listened to a podcast, a book on tape, audiobook about dyslexia. I think it was called The Gift of Dyslexia. And I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, this was published in like 1985, something like that. How did nobody send me a link? And I heard it through Dax Shepard's podcast, The Armchair Expert.
Okay.
He had Gwen Stefani on, and she's recently diagnosed as being dyslexic. So she was talking about some different books. And I listened to a couple of them now, and I'm like, it doesn't change anything, but my goodness, it gives me context to everything in my childhood and why it all makes sense, why I was so art focused, why I was so sport focused, why I leaned into that, and why I was so much better at that kind of stuff. And you go through history of people in history that are dyslexic, and a lot of them are artists, or Einstein, for goodness sake. I mean, it's super interesting. So I was always very artsy. I was always drawing. I was a terrible painter, but I was doodling nonstop. I mean, I have books and books and books of doodling.
I am a doodler too.
You can't. This morning, as a funny side note, I had my iPad set up. I was drinking my tea, had my iPad set up. I was watching a YouTube instructional video on some camera thing. And on my phone at the same time, I'm flipping through Instagram, and my husband walks in and he goes, "What are you doing? Are you even?" I'm like, I can't sit still, and I'm not ADHD, but I need to continually be doing something. So if I didn't have my phone, I would just be doodling while listening to the podcast or to the YouTube video. Like, I just need to be drawing. So I was drawing all the time. And I used to have a dream where I'd be a cartoonist for Disney. And I stuck to this dream for a really long time. Then in like 95, 96, when did you guys have that really devastating earthquake? 95, 96?
Yeah, 90. Well, we had 92 was the Northridge earthquake. 92, 93?
So,
93.
yeah.
93. My son was born.
93.
Right? Yeah.
So when that happened, our school went into like, we need to prepare Vancouver for the big one day because, well, we sit on a fault line too, right? And suddenly when I heard about that, it kind of like, I don't know what it was because I didn't watch a lot of news, but something terrified me. And I thought, now I can't move to California and be a cartoonist for Disney because they have earthquakes that were like that people died.
Sorry, Walt, I'm out.
Yeah, and to have that, like, oh my God, to have that interpretation as a young child in elementary school because they're making us do earthquake drills every day and hiding under our desk. And I think it was that, like, it actually made me so fearful that I was like, that dream is done. I got to find a new one.
I am not coming to California.
No, I haven't been to California. I've been to California many times, but it's just so funny that it like, or it's not, it wasn't funny at the time. I don't know. It was really
It's interesting though, as a child though, you made that connection. And
I have a very like vivid memory of when we started doing these earthquake drills. And I remember when it all shut off in my brain about, I can't be a cartoonist. Now, when I look back on those drawings I used to do, let's be honest, it was not on that track. It was not on the track to draw as a business and to make money drawing it.
They were calling you up to help out in The Lion King, huh?
No one was going to call me. No, for that at least. No one's going to call me for that. So the artsy stuff always stuck. And my mom is incredibly artsy. My mom's a really good painter. My mom has always been crafty. She's an elementary school teacher. You know, my mom has always, I feel like I definitely get that from my mom's side. And so my mom had an old camera. And when I was younger, I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit, go to Norway to see family. When I was 3 years old, I made my first international trip. So, you know, I've been lucky to go places. And I used to take I had a little point and shoot. I can't even remember what the first point and shoot was because it wasn't anything to write home about. But I would take a lot of photos and my parents then would pay to develop my film. And my mom finally was like, look, you're old enough now to like learn how to do this. And I'm tired of paying for your film because the images are awful. Like, not like that. She didn't say it like that, but it was pretty much like, if you like this, why don't you learn about it? And it wasn't that my images were awful. Well, they were, but like, let me just explain to defend myself.
They were child awful.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I knew what I wanted to take a photo of. I could see it. I just didn't know how to work a camera to work the camera. So what I saw would then happen on film.
Translated to film. So when I got into, it was like middle school or high school, I can't remember, when we first had access to a darkroom and classes in photography, I jumped on board. And my mom gave me, I've got it behind me, her 1979 Minolta, a couple lenses. No kids in school really had cameras. And I rolled into class the first day with my old Minolta and it was like, okay, show me, what am I doing wrong here? Like, what is going on? And I just did really well at that class. And I started to spend a lot of time in the darkroom. And if I wasn't playing sports, I was in the darkroom developing images, learning about it. And now, I was around 14, I think, at the time. It just clicked in my brain, and learning how to manually operate your camera to then eventually translate that to what you're seeing. That was the game changer. That's all I needed. I needed the instruction. That's why, like, today when I talk to a lot of kids, when they send me emails, how can I be a whatever photographer? And I'm like, well, you know, first of all, digital has changed it. And I don't think it's bad. But I have to say that, I still am 100% believe that if you invest in your own education, whether you're taking online tutorials or you're paying for, or you're going to college for it, or maybe you're just immersed in YouTube University, whatever you need to do to educate yourself further to help you along is just going to help. So really, in the grand scheme of things, I needed that education to be able to be where I am today. Sure. And I ended up buying a darkroom off of my high school teacher. He had a set for sale. My dad, we had a insulated shed in our yard that they called the playhouse. It was weird. It was like I don't know why it was called the play. We used to play in there, but it was big and it had like nice floors and there used to be a bunk bed in there. So you could like camp in there and stuff. And so my dad, he was like, I'll build you a darkroom in it.
And so he went out and bought the biggest industrial fan ever because he was like, you're not getting high in here in his Norwegian accent. And I was like, okay, well, I was not like a popular kid, right? Like I wasn't doing anything. I was just a rule follower. And so I bought the darkroom set off my high school teacher and set up a darkroom. And I had it until they sold their house, but I never really used it. When I left home, I didn't go back and use it because we had other forms, we had digital and stuff. Right. But it was because of that darkroom I could start experimenting and shooting a lot and developing, and I'm really just like trial by error for the film era. Right. And I'm so grateful for it. And I still shoot film and I love film. It's a place and time. I actually packed a film camera to go with me on my trip on Monday.
Did you really?
To shoot. I did this. So my goal, 2023 goal is every commercial shoot I go on, I want to take a film camera to quickly burst off however many images I can of my subject on film this year. I shoot a lot of interesting photos of people. I like get a lot of cool characters I get to work with in the fishing industry. And so because of that, I was like, it'd just be cool to do this as a personal project and make sure that I do it right when we're done our shooting for the day. So I'm not, stepping on client toes or anything. I just want to do it. So I packed my old school Mamiya 645, 12 exposures, 120 film. It's a little 80 millimeter lens. So it's about this big. And I threw it in my kit, and I'm going to attempt, I've got 3 shoots technically over the next 10 days when I leave. And so because I've got 3 different boat captains and stuff, and I thought it'd be really cool to try to document each one in black and white.
That's great. That is
let you know how it goes.
That is a great camera too, by the way. I wish I kept mine.
Beast.
So typical wife, right? I've got mine. I've got it up on eBay. I'm looking for it again. And my wife walks by and goes, "Didn't you own that camera?" I was like, "Yes, I did 20 years ago, but I might want to go back to it." Like, I wish I didn't sell it. It was such a good camera.
You just need to tell her that it's not that expensive. You could be bing a fancy Hasselblad or something.
I had that and I sold it too.
Yeah.
Because there was that period, everybody was so in on digital that they just didn't want you shooting film anymore because they needed it transmitted that night, that day. They didn't want to deal with shipping and developing. The time lab was getting shut down. So it was just a nightmare. So if you were still a film shooter, it was like, we're going to call somebody else, even if the digital wasn't the greatest still in the early 2000s.
Yeah, like 3 megabytes. So my first camera was 2005 and it was 10 megapixels.
Right. Crop too. Yeah. That was a crop sensor.
Crop sensor. Yeah.
So it wasn't even a full sensor.
And it wasn't great at low light.
No.
But it's so I own about 46 film cameras.
Now
I have.
Why did you keep them? Right? Because owning them, you could buy them now. You and I can go to the camera store and buy all kinds of old cameras. But why?
Yeah.
Did you go through the fact of I'm going to keeping
them
that one?
So mom's camera's right behind me. That camera wasn't going to go anywhere. And up until even so I was still shooting film. So I went to college and I went to play hockey and I was still shooting film. And I was actually taking as many photography courses as possible until finally my guidance counselor was like, you're a business major, right? I'm like, oh yeah. So stop taking photo courses. But I ended up paying my lab at college. They allowed me to pay $30 a month to use the lab unlimited.
Whoa.
And I wasn't even a student of the art department. They're like, yeah, you can come in and use it. And because I just explained to them that I love to do it, but I am a business major. And I thought, well, I'm getting a free education. I need to have something other than an art degree. And that's nothing against people who have art degrees. Mm-hmm. It's just, I really wanted to have a bit of a better structure underneath me. Now, at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I love photography and that's all I wanted to do, but can I make money at it? I didn't know. Right. And so I shot 4x5 film while I was there. I got to use the art department's 4x5 camera. And in Detroit, I used to haul around a 4x5 camera box in downtown Detroit at night to take photos of the skyline.
Good God.
Yeah, on rollerblades too, because that's real cool.
Yes. You're such
But
a catch. I can't.
nobody would bother a female Canadian rollerblading around downtown Detroit in the early 2000s. People were like, what?
With a photo box and a
Okay.
giant tripod. No, who would have bothered you at all?
We're not going to rob her. That seems super weird. And I lived on Cass Corridor. I lived like the university, Wayne State University is right in downtown Detroit. So I was like right in the thick of it. Actually, I just recently went back. I was on a photo shoot in Michigan. So I took a couple extra days to see friends. And I went back to school to go watch a football game. And it was really funny because where I used to run with like keys between my knuckles and between like buildings, there's like a dog park and a cafe now. Like, what? There's like scooters on each block that you can rent, like, the rentable, I was like, where? I'm 20 years too late or too early. I should have been here 20 years earlier.
Yeah, I was waiting to get mugged at any point. No, not anymore.
Oh my gosh. It was a special place in my heart is Detroit, but I don't, I go back when I have photo shoots there basically. So.
Right. When I did my research and I saw that you did have a business degree, I thought, wow, okay. If she didn't have a plan in art, at least she had a good life plan, because with that degree, it was going to set you up for success, because whatever you got into, at least you had the foundation of business.
Yeah. And that's the way I looked at it, is I really wasn't sure. I started off as a communication. Actually, I wanted to be a photojournalist. Coming out of high school, that's the only thing that I had in my brain, but I wanted to play hockey more. And so I was like, well, maybe I could be a photojournalist. But what happened was I got offered a full scholarship, and it was kind of like, well, that school doesn't actually have your program. So again, if you're a young adult and you're actually thinking about doing your education and it's not being paid for by the government, maybe just rethink and take your time to figure out what you want to major in so you're not in financial debt at the end, right? But I was getting a free education, and I was kind of like, they don't have a photojournalistic program at the school, but I could be a communications major. And I didn't really know what that entailed, because no one really, when you go to university, they don't really tell you of all the different jobs there could be out there.
Sure.
It's so standardized in that regard. So when I went to university, I started taking communication courses, and then somehow a lot of the time, I hate to tell you this, but when you're on a team with a lot of other people, you kind of want to be in their classes too, or maybe you want to have spare blocks the same time, or, you want to be able to, and then you have to work your class schedule around practice as well. That's the main component. So how it all fell into place is I had a teammate who was like, you've taken enough classes now to just be a marketing advertising major. And I was like, ooh, that sounds creative. Maybe I could do that. That would sound way more fun than communications, where I had to give like public speaking, which I hated at the time. And so I started taking marketing advertising courses, which there were some creative courses, but it's nothing like it is today. I would perceive. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all these different forms of creative content that needed to be made. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was all newsprint, magazine print, and commercial TV spots.
Right.
And MySpace was around, but I don't remember what ads were on MySpace or AOL Messenger. So, so I ended up shifting my major, and also when you're in NCAA, they have course requirements or requirements for players to take a certain amount. You have to like be at a certain amount each year to continually to qualify. Yeah. I don't know how it is now with players being able to make money off their likeness and all
totally
this stuff.
Changed. That's a whole other
totally
conversation
different.
I can have with you. That's totally different.
Yeah. Like, I had an argument with somebody about it the other day, and I'm like, it's supposed to be about the education, but who am I to say anything? And they're like, you're just bitter. I'm like, I'm not. I didn't ever think I was going to be a millionaire of female hockey. Let's be honest with you. So anyways, long story short there for you. You had originally asked why I held on to these. I took film cameras with me to college, and I got to then, cause that's all there was. And I was shooting with them there. And so I had, my original one, and I started looking into medium format, through my high school teacher. And I bought my Mamiya 645 out of a camera shop in Seattle. They shipped it to me, and I had this 645, and I was super excited about it. And it actually, I have a Hasselblad 500 cm. And it's a beautiful camera. It's got great lenses, but that Mamiya 645 is like a tank.
It is.
And it really is quick to load, easy to use. I actually took the optical viewfinder off that had the light meter in it, and I've just bought a shade, like just the pop-up shade.
Yep.
Meter on my phone now, so much faster. So I started having friends' parents like give me cameras because they knew I liked to shoot film, and that was right as people were transitioning to digital.
Right.
So next thing you know, I have like a box full of cameras, and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with these. So I just started to display them in my bedroom, you know? And then over time, the collection just grew. And then I purchased some cameras to use. And then but the majority of the cameras I have behind me here, I have been gifted. I have a beautiful Nikon F3 behind me that's only shot like 10 rolls through it. My husband's godfather gave it to me. He's like, hey, you like cameras? I've got a brand new Nikon F3 that I've never used. Do you want it? And I was like, yes. How can you say no to that? And for me, a lot of photography for me isn't just about capturing images, but it's the tactile, mechanical feeling I get behind using cameras. And I think that's part of this dyslexic brain of mine where I need to be doing something and I need to feel it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
And it was all so present. It was all like, I knew what I was doing. I could click the buttons and feel everything. And I knew, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm creating images. And so that is why I keep them around, because I'll throw film in them. I'll use them. Or sometimes I just walk up to one and I'll click the shutter and I'm like, oh, that's like butter on bread. That is just beautiful. If I could make like my phone just be like a beautiful, like 645 or a Hasselblad shutter. Oh, it's beautiful. So, I don't develop anymore really in my studio. I do have a black bag in here. I have a studio here in Montana. I actually just sent 7 rolls of film. I decided over Christmas I would just shoot film. I sent 7 rolls of film to the Darkroom. It's in California, actually, online company. And I sent it there, and within a week, I already had scans back.
Wow.
Which was insane. And they're beautiful scans. They did a really good job. And then 4 days later, they sent me my negatives back. They did an incredible job. So I'm going to keep using that service. It was like $12 per roll. And I know a roll is like $12. It's like $24 per roll. But I thought, okay, actually, I like this. I like the convenience of this. And I think this is going to make me want to shoot my film cameras even more. Because I own a Leica M3. I have a Hasselblad X-Pan, panoramic, beautiful camera. They're so hard to find right now.
So hard to find.
And I bought mine 7 years ago for like a quarter of the price. And I was looking at prices the other day. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually worth a lot of money now.
You know, when you were buying that X-Pan, they were probably like, this sucker, I can't believe she's buying this thing.
Yeah, an electronic camera, that's already 20 something years old. And so if you are I actually just gave away a film camera the other day. I gave one also to my nephew this summer because I have a bunch of Pentax like K1000s, which are like bomb proof. And Pentax just announced they might make a film camera, which is so cool that they want to revive a film camera. There's a whole video they just put out saying that there is this really nostalgic group, or basically, I hate to say it, but I like to say it is thank you, hipsters. Hipsters, thank you. You're keeping my film alive, and I appreciate that. So keep going, keep being hip, and you wanting to use film cameras and wanting to be different, because I think that the resurgence of film and the resurgence of companies making film is going to kind of just keep that alive. But I think you need to take digital and you put it on the right side, and you take film and you put it on the left side, and don't even bother to connect them together. Just enjoy both formats the way they are, and they're very different. And that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very good way to look at it, because to have them crossing is very difficult, and to try to, you can have maybe an old FM3 like your F3 like you got and shoot film. You can probably maybe use that lens. It's going to be straight manual if you put it on a brand new, D5, but you're going to have to manually focus it and everything. But if you keep them separate, you're going to be just great.
Yeah, and I have adapters. I've thrown some of my nice lenses or my Leica glass on some stuff. But honestly,
It's designed for Leica. Yeah.
Yeah, and as interesting as it is on my digital, I'd just rather use it on the beautiful piece of art that they created. I mean, when you click that Leica shutter, oh my goodness. I mean,
that
what
M3
a gorgeous camera.
Yeah, that M3 is
and and that M3 belonged to my best friend's father, and they were clearing out his estate, and they kept asking me, can you come and do an appraisal on some cameras for us? So he had a bunch of film cameras, and I was like, sure, but none of them say like L in front of it or like a V for Voigtlander or anything. And they kind of made it sound like it was like a bunch of Kodaks, and I was like, okay, I'll go. So I kind of like kept putting it off, and finally I went up there and I walk around the corner and I walk into the room and she has it all laid out, and I stopped and I just turned around and I walked out of the room. I'm like, oh my God. She had an M3 that he purchased in Paris in 1964, I think it was, with all the paperwork, all the receipts, 3 different lenses, and then like every intricate little Leica created cool filter and everything. She had some beautiful 4x5 Graflex, I can't remember, cameras. There was a bunch of stuff, and I was like, oh my, you've had a Leica this whole time, an M3. I mean, if you're not like a dorky camera geek, like, some of us here, just so you know, a Leica M3, and this isn't for you, but for your listeners, yes. I mean, it's the original camera in the M series, and they started at 3. So I'm not sure why they started at 3, but they made the best one first.
It's like WD-40. It's kind of, they just used it. But
they made the best one first.
What was the cost of it? Does it say on the receipt? Do you know?
So yeah, oh gosh, I have it in my folder.
Ballpark.
I can't really. I think it was like $300 something in the 60s or something, out of Paris, and it was in a lot of money. And then the 3 lenses, he had it circled, and actually at the top here I have a brochure. I have a bunch of brochures that he had, and he had it all circled. And so it was
the actual old Leica brochure.
And so I had always said to somebody that the one camera I wanted was a Leica, because I really wanted to just use that perfect piece of machinery. It's like a Ferrari. It just purrs, right? Oh. But you can go online, you can buy them. But I said to someone years and years ago, I'm like, I have a feeling I'm going to find one day, whether it's in a thrift store or whether it's in a random antique store or someone's basement. Well, it turns out I found one. And so I just said to them, they were doing an estate appraisal. So either they had to purchase it individually as siblings of the estate, or it would sell with the estate. And so I went through the M3 and the prices at the time and the lenses and everything. And I couldn't, it looked like everything worked on it, but I wasn't totally sure. Right, but there wasn't any separation in the diopter or whatever.
Okay.
There wasn't any separation.
Right.
Everything looked good. And so I gave them an offer, and I just said, if you sell this for with the estate, I mean, if someone keeps it, that's great. But if you sell it, I would love to be the first one at least to put an offer in on it. And just so you know, I will use it, and it will be loved and used. And so they eventually took me up on it. And I have their father's name. He had one of those old school label guns that was like, you can feel it.
Yeah, you put his into the plastic.
Yeah, and so he has that on the bottom of the camera. So I left it on the bottom of the camera. So his name's on the camera. I took the original light meter off because it actually scratched the M3 pretty good. It can scratch. It was known for scratching the top of the Leica brass, which is crazy. And then I sent it in to the one guy now. Like, there's this main guy in, I think it's Pennsylvania, who services them. And I was noticing, I shot a couple of rolls off. I developed them myself, and I was noticing that there was shutter speeds that were just going black. So what I didn't know at the time, it was the shutter was sticky, like it was sticking. Yeah. And so I called this guy up, and it was like, okay, I'm shipping it to his personal address. This seems so weird, but like, he came highly recommended by like all the local camera stores I called. And so I sent it to him, and with a couple of the lenses, and there was a little bit of haze in one, so we cleaned that out. And then he got the shutter, he calibrated it, and he actually could look it up through the serial number that it was last serviced in New York at B&H Photo in 19 whatever. Like, it was really cool being able to get that information.
Awesome history.
And it's just a beautiful camera. So I have it actually, I usually keep it in my safe, have it. And Montana's a really good place to actually have old cameras because we have such low humidity here. So it's actually like a prime place to collect vintage cameras because a lot of cameras can get fungus or haze. Right. And over time, some of my Vancouver cameras in the prisms, which you can't replace on the majority of them unless you have like an F3, have this fungus growing in them. There's a bunch of them down here and I can't do anything about it. So yeah, this little M3, it's beautiful and I'm loving on it. And I've been photographing now for 4 years with it or so. And it's great. It comes with 3 lenses. Like the M3 could only take 3 lenses, that would actually show you in the viewfinder. Yep. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, it's my dream camera. And so I'm not taking to on my next trip with me though. If I'm going to go to like a really humid place, I'm not going to take that camera with me. So I have to head to Florida on my next shoot. Yeah. So I'm taking this Mamiya. That's a tank. And, so yeah, I still have them. I love them. And I've been trying to, if someone's showing like big interest in wanting to learn film or shoot film, my goal is to kind of like, there's some cameras I have that have been given to me that are not one of a kind, that are just really good starter film cameras. Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to actually gift more away to people, because I'll always run into them. I find, those Pentax K1000s, you find them everywhere, and they're just a really good camera, like just a beast. Yeah. And my sister's always on the lookout for like cameras that, garage sales, and she'll call me with a photo. Do you want this? And it'll be like $10. I'm like, grab it, and I'll check it out and maybe be able to give it to somebody. So there's certain cameras that I won't give away. And then if someone shows enthusiasm, then I want them to be excited about it.
That's exactly what you want to do. You don't want to give them all away. So
yeah, I don't want to give them all away.
So you
clearly hoarding issue here.
Yeah, well, it's a good looking hoarding issue. So it's all right.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
You get done with college, you get done with hockey. Your NHL career is not going to take off at that moment. What is your plans? What are you thinking?
Well, so as a female in athletics, I hate to say this, but your chances are you're not going to be a millionaire. Yeah. So I hate to tell you that. I mean, it sucks, but there isn't necessarily a market to make a lot of money out of it. So actually what had happened is in my senior year, I was playing, and I was just in the dark room all the time and taking photos. And I was on the streets on my rollerblades, taking photos at night, black and white, 4x5 prints of downtown Detroit and the Fox Theater and some of these iconic places. And coaches and the athletic director actually asked if they could buy prints off of me. And at the time I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. That sounds pretty cool. I make some money. So the athletic director kind of spearheaded it. He came up to me and he was like, I really want that. I want it framed. I want it matted, and I want it big. So I blew it up as big as I could on an enlarger, picture? Right? It's of downtown Detroit city skyline, actually shot in Windsor, Ontario, back over at the skyline, black and white, reflection off the river perfectly. It's a beautiful black and white image. It definitely not the first person to take it, but probably the first person to haul a damn 4x5 camera over there to do it. Because we go to Windsor all the time. And so I printed it as big as I could. Go through the tunnel on my rollerblades. And so he bought one, and he told me to tell him the price and buy the frame and mat it and do all of that. And so I did all of it, and I charged him a price, which was probably like terribly underpricing myself probably. But it was my first time being like, oh, I can sell photos. Maybe I could do this. This is cool. This is the only thing I truly love to do outside of hockey. And when you focus your majority of your teenage years or your high school life or your middle school on a sport, and then suddenly you wake up one day and you're like, oh my goodness, I need to have a better plan here. it kind of hits you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to figure this out. What do I want to do? I don't know. I was like throwing around the idea of grad school. NCAA will like cover some of that if you want to stay, but I couldn't stay in the US, right? Like your government educated me, but I couldn't stay. There was no way for me to stay. So it's like either I go home or I stay in education and I could keep doing school. And so I started selling these prints and different prints. And then my assistant coach of the hockey team, she's an awesome lady, and she asked me if I'd be interested in taking some photos for our little hockey brochure that the department puts out every year. So I lined it up and I shot us on the 645 Mamiya, a black and white shot of all the girls on the hockey team and some shots of iconic, like they used the shots of like the Fox Theater and the Lions and like all of that. And so, they published it in the little book and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I like a dream of mine would be to have a photo in a newspaper. That's kind of what I was always like thinking. I'm like, this would be cool. And so someone then ended up hooking me up with the local paper and said, hey, if you want to just go and see what they're doing, you can basically like shadow them a couple of times. And I, at the time, still just had my film camera. And so one of the guys at the local paper was like, why don't you come out to the softball game and you can try my equipment and just see how it is. So I got to hold his like digital camera at the time with a big lens and take a photo of the picture. And then he published it in the university paper. And I was like, this is cool. I like this feeling. And so I'm like struggling to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm now selling prints pretty regularly to students even and such, framed prints of Detroit. And so
of Detroit of all places, like
of Detroit. Yeah. Of Detroit. I mean, hey, you don't knock Detroit till you've been there. It's got some pretty cool architecture.
I've been there, but it's not like
hotbed.
People say the architectural place of the world. Detroit.
Yeah, it was a well, I mean, it's got this crazy infusion of like old art mixed with destruction. And that's how I would classify it. It's like what was beautiful mansions mixed with decay. Yeah. So strange. But my mom at the time she was over me being away. She was like, okay, you have been gone for 4 years. We'd love you to come home. And do you really want to do your master's in business? Like, is this something you really want to do? And I was like, I don't know. Like, what am I going to do? I don't know. So she ended up finding a photography program for me based in Vancouver. And she was like, they take 20 students a year. It's an intensive program. It's a 2-year, program that basically breaks it down from trying to train you to be a lab tech all the way to being a professional photographer. And so I had actually in 2005 asked my parents for a loan while I was in the summer. So I graduated. I did every summer to finish in my 4 years. So technically I graduated at the end of the summer of 2005. And so beginning of summer, hockey's now done. Now I'm just trying to get through school while NCAA will still pay for it. And I just need to graduate before the fall starts or else they're not going to cover it. I need to get it done. So I asked my parents if I can have a loan from them. And the only place legally you could work in the United States at the time was on campus. So I was working on campus in the athletic department, coaching or reffing games like baseball. And then you sit at the desk and you answer phones in the athletic office and stuff.
Right.
So as a Canadian, that's the only place I could technically work on campus. And so anyways, my mom found me this program. And I managed to get a loan to buy a Nikon D200, and knew nothing about lens selections, really knew nothing about digital cameras. But for $2,000, they gave me a $2,000 loan. I know. Sure, I think I've repaid that. I don't know actually. And my mom said, "Okay, if this is what you want to do, then let's get you a digital camera." And soon as I got a digital camera in my hands, things actually accelerated and changed right away.
What lens did you get with the D200?
My God, I got to think about that.
a zoom, something
I bet
like
if I go into those photos, I'd figure it out. But man,
yeah, you could pull a metadata up. But like what,
Yeah.
28 to 70, 7200?
well, it wouldn't have been anything super expensive at the time because I wouldn't have had the funds for it. But it was probably a kit lens.
Yeah,
it's probably like
55.
an 18 to 35
Right,
or 55 to 200 or whatever a kit lens would be. I can't remember
18 to
specifically.
55 because that's a crop sensor, DX.
Crop
So, yeah.
sensor, but everything changed then in terms of your acceleration in learning. Just changed.
Yeah.
I already had my basis behind me and a good foundation of photography. I really feel that film, I don't think it needs to be a struggle. That's the thing. Like, I don't think that anything that people do today necessarily need to be a struggle, but I think you need to put experience and time into it. So it doesn't need to necessarily be this like terrible, I slugged through the dirt to get there, but it's made me. I don't, when I get young kids reaching out to me, I don't, want to be the way that all the photographers were to me back then, where they're like, don't come in the industry, and they're all hiding on their little Easter egg of they don't want to share anything. Nobody wants to talk about it, and they're all mean. And it's also like a old boys club of dudes who don't want to like give me any information.
Right.
So I don't mean to, I'm not ragging on guys
but it was
here,
very
but
true.
That's the way it was in the industry. And so, once I got this digital camera, things just clicked so much faster, and I was producing work. Like, that camera never left my hands. I was shooting. And guess what? I could see results right there.
Right.
That changed everything. So I already was shooting with my film cameras, but it would then maybe take me a month to process something. And then I don't know. I was never the photographer that like took immaculate notes, be like, oh yeah, I shot that at, like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what's on these 5 rolls of film. I'm not an organized person in that regard. So, but the digital aspect, and I had no training in any kind of post software, anything, but, it really allowed me to progress quickly. So suddenly I had a digital portfolio that I could then send to the school. And I sent them, 20 images, and I applied, and I already had a degree. I was finishing my business degree, and that was huge for them. And they only take 20 students a year. And so he was like, okay, you're in. So I packed up everything in Michigan, and I put all of my boxes of things, all the cameras I was collecting out there from people's parents. I put like 7-8 boxes on a Greyhound bus and shipped it back to Vancouver, because that's how we used to ship. It was on a Greyhound bus out of Windsor, Ontario.
Whoa.
I mean, I shipped back my microwave. I don't know what the heck I was doing.
It must have been honestly, the best microwave ever.
No, it's so ridiculous. I think I shipped back like a lot of the cooking stuff. Like, why didn't I sell all that? I don't know what I was thinking. So, I got home. Like, I literally got home the last couple of weeks of August, and then September swung right back into school. And I was already in school mode. So for me, it wasn't anything different, but I was now in school with like young kids who were fresh out of high school and were stressing out about everything. And I'm like, why? Like, oh, how do you have so much time on your hands? And I'm like, well, I have a degree, so I'm not having to take any business photography courses, which they were actually making the kids do, that were mostly just business courses on invoicing and stuff. And so I got to skip a lot of classes that they took my credits for.
That's good.
And, yeah. And I really loved the program. I didn't really excel educationally wise. I never cared about my grades at that point. I was like, just as long as I get my assignments in, I just wanted to shoot and absorb the shooting aspect of it. And there was a lot of training and a lot of learning and a lot of things that maybe sucked the art out of you so you could learn the standards of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I owe a lot to that. Foundation.
Of it.
I owe a lot to that program. I'm grateful for it. I if I can help out as alumni, I will critique work and stuff. I can never really be a practicum teacher, unfortunately, for students because I am far away. But anytime a student wants to connect, I'm always excited to chat with them. I've gone and given a lecture there before, and now they were still doing film when I got there. You did 1 year film, 1 year digital. Now it's all digital, and they get to play with film. Yeah. They get to play with film. So
we'll break out a little box of film for you today.
Exactly. Yeah, Jesus. Exactly. But
were you just absorbing everything like a sponge? Because you're obviously a little more mature. You're not 18, right? So you got some life underneath you. You're obviously being a Division I athlete gives you discipline. A lot of people don't realize that when you are an athlete, it's time management, it's discipline. People tell you where to go and where to be, and you have to perform. So that's another aspect you had. When you come to this at this point in your life, were you just taking it all in and it was just unfiltered information?
A little yes and a little no. I think at that point I was really tired of post-secondary education. Really. I mean, I had done 1 year at home while after I had been injured. I actually took some college courses. Then I did 4 straight years. So now I'm on 5 years. And then suddenly I have 2 years more ahead of me. And I was like, man, I just kind of want to be in the world. I want to be living. I want to be an adult. Like I'm an adult and I'm hanging out with 18-year-olds here. And so I was absorbing.
Kind of rough too.
Yeah, it was a bit strange. And I think the thing is they were all frantic. Oh my God. I just remember they were all so frantic before each test, running around. And I was like, okay. I mean, for me, I'm grateful that I did the course after a degree because I could. So I guess the way I would say it is I, at this point, knew I wanted to be a professional photographer. Okay. I'm on track for that. This is what I love to do. I was one of the only students who had a digital camera now at this point. So I was shooting a lot. They hadn't bought them yet because they were so expensive. So 2006 is when I started this program and kids were able to borrow them from the studio, like from the department. You could borrow backing to a Hasselblad and a digital backing, or they had a couple DSLRs and I don't remember what they were, but I was one of the first ones who had actually purchased some lenses, figuring out what I like and trying different things. And so I think part of my challenge was I was really only absorbing what I was keyed into. Okay. So I'm like, I don't like studio shooting. I don't like lighting. I don't like being stuck to the confines of a camera on a tripod. So did I do my best when I had to go shoot still art of fruit? No. No. Did I show up and get it done? Yes. Did I get a grade for it and finish it and complete my check mark? Absolutely. Did I then sink my teeth into all that other stuff? Yes. So anytime I could be outside, when they would give us no limitations on a project and they said, your interpretation of this, go shoot it, I was already out there shooting it. And that's the thing. I already had my camera in my hand and I was shooting. And these kids were just struggling to figure out math class. And I was like, been there. Luckily didn't have to take any more math because I managed to finish math in university, somehow. But anyways, I think I really absorbed at the time. In hindsight, I wish I had been a little bit more focused on, okay, I'd like to actually learn more about off-camera flash and lighting, and I own flashes and lighting, but I actually don't need to use any of it in my particular field that I work in. Or if I do, it's a very specific time and I don't go too crazy overboard. I find keeping it simple is the best for me for lighting, because I'm not one of those people who can visualize lighting, which there's some photographers out there who will look at it and they're like, okay, I want this light and I want a key light here and I want a hair light and let's get this background light and that's great, but I never saw it. I could see lighting when it was happening in front of my eyes and be like, oh, okay, actually, I need that subject here. So I think I absorbed when I needed to absorb to be successful in the way that I wanted to be successful. And what the biggest thing I got out of that program is in your final year, you get to have a practicum with 2 photographers. And there's a bunch of photographers and you can reach out to whoever you want. And if they'll take you, they'll be your practicum teacher.
Interesting.
Well, I managed to get and so real on the scene experience. So I got one with this one guy who just made me fetch him coffee. And again, I don't think you need to struggle to make it in the industry, but that's how he felt. You needed to do all the things he had to do before he'd even let you look at what he's shooting. I just don't buy that. I just don't see, how do you learn from fetching someone coffee? And if I'm a barista at a coffee shop, then, I'll get you coffee. Just wasn't a good learning environment for me. And, I'm a hockey player. I already have an attitude. I'm going to talk back to you if I need to.
check your ass in the boards.
God,
what I'm gonna do.
I'm not great with authority. If you start yelling in my face, it takes me right back to hockey, and I'm not good at it. And I will
pull his jersey over his head and give him a good old whooping.
Yeah, I'll just be like, I don't have fucking time for this. So, my next practicum, I reached out to the head photographer of the Vancouver Canucks, and his name's Jeff Finnick, and definitely was a mentor of mine. He took me on. Actually,
Jeff took you on.
He emailed me and said, "Why don't you come out and we can try it out for one game, one Canucks game." I knew that I really loved the journalistic side. And my idea was like, maybe I could be a newspaper photographer. But again, like dying on the vine newspapers, I didn't know anything about the industry. And I also didn't know of the club of guys that shot in that industry. And also the lack of money in that industry at times too. There's
Hockey.
very few slots. And so he called me out, and I went out to the game, which was awesome. I got to go to an NHL game, and I sat in the room and I quietly watched him and did what he asked. Can you run a card here? Could you go check on that camera to make sure it's turned on? And then after that game, I didn't shoot anything. It was just, he wanted to see, I guess, who I was and everything. And so I get an email from him. He's like, why don't you come back next week for, Thursday's game? I said, okay. And then after a few, I think it was finally, he's like, you can bring your camera and you can shoot when I don't need you. And I said, okay, cool. So it was basically, I did that for an entire season, being able to, I'd run to get his card. So I'd get to shoot at the boards. I'd have to run out of the arena. Like you go down into the basement area, back around all the way to like the benches or the penalty box, or no, sorry, not the penalty box. Like there's the benches, and then the where some of the ESPN guys now stand to commentate, because I think it's like so much better to commentate from there, part of the action. That was a whole thing, because they then started taking up photographers' spots because they just really needed to be there. So I would then run all the way back.
A remote camera?
Sorry. Yeah, he would have a remote in one of the nets. Okay. He'd have a remote usually in a corner on a magic arm. Okay. And then he'd also have a remote set up, sometimes shooting top down from from overhead. Mm-hmm. And I would very rarely have to go up there to get the overhead camera, unless it was like a epic, beautiful, incredible shot. Then it's like, okay, I need you to go up to get that. But I would, he trained me to grab his cards, to upload into Photo Mechanic, to caption, and to send to Getty Images to New York live. So you're now maybe 20 photos a game, maybe. And he would star the images on his camera that he was shooting with of anything he got on here. And then he would say, hey, I could never get out the goalie cameras, right? Because those would be in all game. But anything under the boards, or there's one at the very floor at that arena too, that you could shoot through plexiglass on the floor. Mm-hmm. And he'd be like, I think I fired it at the right time. He'd be shooting strobes too.
Right.
So, he's a phenomenal photographer. I believe he still is shooting for them. I haven't connected with him in a really long time. I believe he's still shooting for them. He would go on the team trips and shoot all of this stuff. And when you're shooting strobe in the NHL, I mean, he said he used to shoot Hasselblads on strobe. And that's how he used to shoot hockey. And I'm like, so you literally are just timing it perfectly. And so when he was shooting on strobe, I was shooting no strobe, and I'm shooting, and you don't realize actually how dark NHL arenas truly are. Even though they look bright, they look so bright. But if you put anything other than an f2.8 lens on, it's like dark. And so he trusted me to edit his images. He showed me how exactly I needed to do it. And anytime I saw a number in a jersey, there had to be a name and a caption. I'm the worst person to be a captioner too, because I can't spell. So that was a trial and error.
Especially European names.
Yeah. Trial and error situation. But it wasn't just like I was saying names. I also had to like make up a comment about it. And it's like, and I think he took me on is because I was eager to listen. I also knew hockey really well. And that was the thing. I knew the game, and I didn't get like oogly girl-eyed around the NHL guys. They all respected me. I appreciated that. I got to photograph Wayne Gretzky when he came in as a coach. I got to photograph, in Vancouver, people would know like Trevor Linden. Like I got to photograph some really big guys in the NHL, and it was the coolest thing. And
was Pavel Bure was still with them at the time?
No, he was retired at that point. I'm not that old. Pavel was, he would have, when would he have left the Canucks? Probably in 98 or something like that.
All right.
Yeah. But it just, that is what I wanted. But it was weird because I then started shooting weddings,
off of
randomly. That? The reason why I started shooting weddings is because at the time of my age range, I had a lot of people in my life who were getting married.
That's right.
I'm now 25, 26.
Yep.
People are getting married. And because you have friends that are getting married, and maybe I've never shot a wedding before, they're like, you're a photographer. Can you shoot our wedding? And I'm like, yeah, all right. So I started shooting weddings, and that actually started to snowball. I shot weddings for 7 years. That would fill up my entire summer, basically. And it was great money. I mean, I actually highly recommend, if you're a starting photographer, to shoot weddings. And the reason why I recommend it is because you get to be a portrait photographer, a landscape photographer, a food photographer, an editorial photographer. You get to be all in one day, and you just get one chance at it. And it makes you so much better. So, I was never like, I would go back to shooting weddings one day, because as soon as you say the word wedding, I can just add zeros to the end of the price. But I kind of got tired of it and liked shooting other things. And
7 years is a long time.
7, yeah, I did. Yeah. And it was all out of Vancouver, and I had a big client list. And then guess what happens is all those people of friends start to get older. And next thing you know, you got to go to wedding shows and you got to like market yourself. And I just didn't want to do that. And that wasn't me. But I'd have the NHL guys ask me about the wedding industry, because at the time I didn't know it, that the papers were going downhill. Mm-hmm. That the sports photography realm was just not what it was. And so I started getting guys asking me about weddings. Oh, how's the wedding industry? Or I was shooting real estate too in Vancouver. I could do 2, 3, 4 apartments or homes a day for a realtor, and then have their images to them by the evening for the MLS, not professional soccer, but the listing site that they needed. And you could just turn over those images really quickly. I never lit it. It was just all just shooting natural light, getting it done, and turning over so many homes. So at this point, I was now working as a photographer and getting paid jobs while finishing photography school.
Learning what you did with the Canucks, did that help you understand editing and archiving?
Absolutely. I would not be where I am today if I had not gotten that practicum from Jeff. And the main reason is year 2, he took me on again. I'm now not a student, but now I'm an assistant for him. And the Canucks are now going to pay me an assistant fee to be his assistant. So for 2 years after that, he didn't take on another student from the school. He kept me around to keep doing this and keep shooting. And then he suddenly managed to get me some money to get paid to shoot some of this stuff. And then next thing you know, he can't go shoot a soccer event. So Getty Images calls me and say, hey, you shoot with Jeff. Could you go shoot this soccer event? This is what we need. This is what we pay. And I was like, okay. Jeff called me one day and he's like, hey, you drive boats, right? And I said, yeah, I was on the side still driving these eco tours, and I used to work at this marina and I drive them. And he goes, the Canucks are going to be doing a fishing charity event up in northern British Columbia for Children's Hospital. Are you at all interested in going up there to photograph a salmon derby? And I'm like, yes. And I said, hold on, where? And he goes, Haida Gwaii, formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands. It's now called Haida Gwaii after the Haida people. Or has been named again after the Haida people. And it is northern BC. You look at Alaska, basically, or Japan, and you fly there on a plane that takes you into a town called Masset, and from there you helicopter into a lodge in the middle of nowhere. And There's bald eagles, there's humpback whales, there's killer whales, there's insane rock formations. I mean, it is it's a place that I feel is good for your soul. It is an incredibly beautiful place. And so when he was like, do you want to go to Haida Gwaii? I was like, yes. What do I need to do? Well, you're not going to get paid for the shoot, but we'll fly you up there and you get to stay in the lodge and you get to have wine and champagne and fancy food. And I need you just to document the players on these boats fishing. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. That sounds cool. So I got flown up to this lodge, and it was in 2008. I flew up to this lodge, and over 15 years later, I still have a relationship with the lodge. But the Vancouver Canucks sprung me into the fishing industry without me even knowing it at the time. So I actually haven't been up to the lodge in the past 3 years, COVID and restrictions and everything, but I'm actually on their books to go up for a 9-day trip to shoot as much stock for them as possible. So I shoot everything from their food to, some of the cheesy holdups, but also landscapes. They need drone stuff. They need underwater releases of salmon, details of new rooms they might have built, new boats they have, just everything, content, just as much content as possible. So I owe that practicum, and I didn't know it at the time, but that would change the course of what I thought I could be as a photographer and launch me into this whole different industry.
Wow. I mean, if you take up the piano or pole vaulting, you might not end up at where you were in Michigan. You might not end up taking photography, going to Canada and becoming who you are. It's weird how that playing hockey, becoming a photographer, understanding hockey, saying yes because you've been on the water with Dad, puts you here today.
And the craziest thing about it is, and I also link this in my brain as well, is that Canadian lodge ended up opening a lodge down in South America in Panama for marlin fishing. They had a floating 150-foot ship and 2 sport boats. Well, one day they said, hey, you could shoot marlin fishing, right? I'm like, I don't even know what a marlin is, but okay. So I was actually I was still shooting for the Canucks as an assistant, and they got into the playoffs, and I found out that Sports Illustrated was coming into town, and I wasn't going to have a seat anymore. There wasn't going to be a chair for me. So I would just be a card runner and editor. And at the time he had, a buddy of his doing more captions, because I was clearly not excelling at caption work. It was not my thing. So I ended up getting a call from the fishing lodge, and they said, we really want to send you to Panama. We want to send you south. And I said, okay. I said, well, the playoffs are happening. I'm committed. So I called the photographer of the Canucks and I laid it out to him, and he said, you know what? It sounds like a really good opportunity. I can bring someone in to edit. That's not an issue, Jess. I really think, like, with losing your seat in the building during the whole playoffs, I'll be in the basement editing. And at that point, he's like, you should go. I think this would be a good opportunity for you. So I went to Panama, and I lived down there off and on. I went down for a few weeks at the first time, and then the next time I went down for 2 months. And the first time I went, though, I went down, and the ship was this big, beautiful yacht, 150 feet long. And we used to get a lot of boats pulling up to it, and they'd come for dinner. They would call ahead and like come for dinner. And we were out in the middle of the jungle, like literally there's nothing around. We're like 4-hour boat ride from Panama City. We're in the middle of nowhere. And one day I get the manager of the boat says, hey, Jess, there's this guy coming to the boat with his clients. His name is Wade. He's Texan, and I think you should meet him. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. You're going to set me up on the high seas. And a Texan, I'm from Canada. This is ridiculous. Anyways, so who is now my husband, I ended up meeting him down in Panama. So it just is like full circle for me, really is true full circle. Everything from my hockey to the fishing to living and growing up on the ocean to having a job that is ocean based to then meeting Wade, my husband, in Panama, where he's running a private marlin fishing operation. Like, how random is that? And so
Love in
I
Panama.
owe a lot.
Yeah.
I love in Panama. So actually, hope I get to go back. I haven't been back there in a while. He closed the operation back in, I think it was 2015 now, and sold off the boats and moved on from that. But
well, he's a lucky man.
Yes, yeah, best catch, right?
Damn.
Best catch. But it just is interesting how by saying yes to certain opportunities, I really do think that it allowed me to get to where I am now, and putting in time and experience. I wholeheartedly believe that if you put in your time and you put in experience, and it doesn't have to be this grueling, terrible sledging through the mud kind of time.
And
if you just put in your time and you're open to opportunities, you can then eventually find the path you're supposed to be on. And I believe that in the photography industry, because it's hard to make a living as a professional photographer.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to say yes a lot. And when you first start off, you have to say yes a lot and don't get paid a lot. So my hope is that maybe some of the younger people don't have to go through that part of it, because I believe you deserve to be paid for things.
Right. Now, with your business sense, right, you've got that under your belt. Are you looking at stuff saying, wait a minute, if I keep taking these jobs, at the end of the year, I'm not going to make any money. I'm not even going to have enough to pay myself. I'm just breaking even. I mean, was your business cap and your creative cap colliding at times?
Oh, always. I feel like even today, sometimes they collide, where it's like, you know what your value is, you know what you're worth. And then you have someone reach out to you and you're like, for half a second, my brain will be like, well, that sounds cool. And I'm like, wait a minute. No adulting here. Nope. Sorry, guys. Sorry. These are my rates. And this is what everybody else in the industry pays me. So no, I'm not going to get, the way I look at it, I travel so much. I do about 84 flights a year or more than that. I almost managed to make it to the top tier of Delta last year. And I was so excited. I was so close. I was $4,000 away from it. I was like,
$4,000 or miles?
So dollars, because they either do miles, which I was very close in miles, but they also do it in money. So the amount of money spent traveling, that helps you get there. So all the companies are paying for my travel fees, but I'm booking them. And because I'm booking it, I was only $4,000 off, which is like one European round trip, right? Yeah. But I wasn't going to just get on a plane to do it. But, as I've gotten older and as I have more finite time or less finite time, or finite time, I guess is the only way to say it, with my father and my parents, and then time with my husband and dogs. I don't really want to get on an airplane unless it's financially worth it for me anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just won't. It's too much travel to make it sound, I mean, in all honesty, a lot of the time when you tell people you're a photographer, they're like, ooh. And I'm like, it sounds a lot sexier than it is. It's really not. It's a lot of hotels, a lot of airports. And then, yeah, I love my job and I love to do what I do. But like, a lot of people are like, oh, are you going to tack on extra days and like go fishing? And I'm like, why would I go fishing? I just shot 4 days of fishing. I want to go home. I want to go home.
And that's the thing people also say, because they don't realize it. Oh, you've been fishing for 4 days. I have not thrown one rod in the water. I've watched people fish for 4 days. I've captured images for clients. Oh, now, by the way, I've got to go back, edit. I don't know if you have to do post-production work. You got to go through things. You got to put it together, curate a library, put it on Photo Shelter, or send out a hard drive. Like, your work's not done the day they get out of the water.
No. I have a couple more weeks left of work. Like, I'd just like to go home and do the other things I love to do. If I'm going to go fishing, I'm going to go fly fishing out my back door here in Montana. Yeah. I live in one of the best fly fishing states in the United States. So as much as I would enjoy to go pick up a rod and throw it around, like, I'm not passionate about that. Honestly, like, I do love to fly fish here. And if I have time and friends are headed out on the river, I'd love to go out on the river for a day, but it's not my main passion in life. My main passion is photography, and I love to ride my bike. I'm a bicycle rider. I love to ride my bike and just spend time. I feel like the more time I spend away, the more of a homebody I've become.
Isn't that funny? I'm the same way too.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. Like, I've got I hate when I have to check on my Marriott and do something. I look how many lifetime days I've got, and I'm like, oh God, that's like 7 years I've lived in a hotel room. Like,
I do sleep really well in hotel rooms, though. I have to say, between just like cohabitating and like having dogs, and I don't find I sleep great at home, and I sleep really well in hotel rooms. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of it. But over the last couple of years, one of the main companies I work for, one of the conversations I had with them, which this doesn't happen often, and it was a really remarkable conversation to have, was, what can we do to make your life a little bit better? So the amount of work we want you to do is more successful. And I said, can we try to group together photo shoots? I know this isn't going to work all the time, but if I'm already on the road and I'm on the East Coast, can we like try to do some back-to-back shoots so then I can be home for longer periods of time? And so it doesn't work all the time, but you know, I'm going on a 10-day stint where we have 3 shoots in the same area in Florida with 3, you know, the 2 of them are with 2 different kind of anglers and the other one's with a different company. So that kind of just, I managed to fit it all in there. But it's that kind of thing, like having conversations with people where it's like also standing up for yourself in this industry as a photographer. I'm not necessarily talking about the fishing industry, but like as a photographer, I think so much we get pushed around kind of because I think imagery and the, imagery is worth these days in general public's eyes due to social media and the ease and use of everybody getting images. I think that it's devalued so much in some circumstances. So if you work for the right people, I think that if you can vocalize what you're needing, it is a little easier to hopefully plan it if you're working with the right people. And so the company I'm shooting for, mostly full time, I would say it's my main full-time client. That was one of the conversations we had last year, and we actually tried to stick to it. We managed to get like 3 or 4 months in a row where we did 12-day shoots. And I said, I don't want to be gone longer than 14 days. I can't do that. I can't be gone for more than 2 weeks, because that's a lot. And we had a situation come up where they wanted me to be gone for 20 something days. And I called it and I said, wasn't part of our talk. I can't physically do that. I am tired.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, right? They also have to understand you're performing at a peak level mentally and physically. And mentally, like you're bleeding out every creative juice out of your mind day in and day out, especially what you're doing. If you're dealing with salt water and weather and early morning and nobody wants to shoot at noons. And so you're up at dawn, you're out at evening. It can be very taxing.
It's very taxing. It's also very physically taxing. Holding cameras in hot environments or over salt water, and it's just you, right?
And you're dragging that little taxi around behind you.
Yeah. No. I just did a shoot in Mexico, and I actually brought Bertha with me, my little boat, Bertha. And I didn't end up using her for the shoot. I had the mate on the boat, this young kid, he actually carried my underwater housing for me the whole time walking behind me on the flats. And I was like, you're strong. You'll be good. You'll be good.
There you go, young lad.
He was a nice kid, because like I have a harness system, so I have 2 cameras on me. But if we have a fish and I go to like bend down, I have leashes on the cameras in case they fall off or so they don't go in the water. But it's just so much more productive if I can be like, here, hold this one camera and I'll grab the underwater housing, and then I can just be really focused on what I'm doing. But each shoot is different. So now I find myself, and the last 5 years, I now classify myself as a commercial photographer in the sports fishing industry. So I shoot products. So I shoot rods, reels, baits, sunglasses, clothing, boat, engines, parts. And I shoot it all on location. So I'm not a studio photographer. I am on location with the anglers on their boat all day, watching them, waiting for that moment, shooting products in their hands and usage, and trying to make it look all really cool and creative all at the same time. So it's a very niche thing that I'm doing, and I'm very aware of it. And I don't necessarily plan to be 60 years old and jumping around boat to boat, but I will always be a photographer. So one day when I make that choice to pivot, I will pivot again, and maybe I'll pivot back into weddings. Maybe I'll want to just be in a studio. Maybe I'll actually start a magazine or something. If I could be a millionaire and just shoot for magazines the rest of my life and just shoot editorial content of really cool people, I would do that. But, financially, that's not a great decision. Right. So don't do that if you need to pay bills. So I think that's the thing with photography is people really young people, especially, tend to focus on just what they want to do and not the process behind needing to get there. Mm-hmm. And it is really cool to say you want to be an outdoor photographer, or you want to work in the outdoor industry. So I get so many emails. How do I work with brands? And I'm like, that was never my focus. My focus was to shoot and get paid for it. So what did I have to do to get there? And how did I meet people along the way and shake hands with people that led me there? And, you know, I think that's the thing, is everything I'm doing. I had a magazine, Angler's Journal. I contribute to them quite a bit when I get a chance, and I've shot something that's maybe for a brand, but it's really cool. Maybe it's not like unlaunched material, so it's okay. I sometimes will be like, hey, can I send these 15 to 20 images to this? Sometimes this magazine will get a writer and they'll write a story for it, which is just cool. And I love that. And the last 2 months I've been in the magazine. She said, I'd like to have you on Instagram as contributor, kind of like of the month, kind of just showing you as a spotlight, basically. And I said, yeah, sure. That sounds fun. Nice. I'm open to it. So I sent them a bunch of photos to put up, and they make a carousel. But one person had made a comment. Of course, generally all my comments on my photos are usually quite positive, because I'm just posting my own personal photos and I'm not getting involved in things.
Why are you reading comments?
Yeah, I know this one, because usually I'm like, thanks so much, I appreciate it. Like, it's like people I know too, right? Like, it's followers of that I know, or people in the industry.
This one guy wrote,
my mom's my number one fan, and generally everything is because my mom's going to look at it. But this one guy wrote, and it wasn't negative, but I read it and I was like, that's weird to say. He said, great photographs, imagine how you'll be when you have more experience or something. And my comment back was, thank you so much. After 15 years of shooting, I can't wait to get even better. Like, 15 years is a long fucking time. Let's be honest with you.
Yes.
That's more than, that's a long time to be doing one career.
I'm
trying to think of how was that compliment? Was it backhanded?
Yeah, it's like a backhanded compliment. And I think also... No, I think also maybe in his brain it wasn't meant the way it came out, but maybe it was meant to be like, look where you are, and I can't wait to see where you're going to be in 20 years from now, maybe something.
Yeah, you're brilliant now. You're going to be more brilliant later.
Well, I'm trying to like make the best out of it in my brain. And I'm like, and I don't want to sound arrogant about it, but I feel like I've made it now. Okay. I don't need to keep proving my damn self.
Okay. So let's look, let's look at that flip side. What do you want to get better at? Like, do you have a goal where you say, like, you're taking out the film this year? Do you say, where I want Jessica to be somewhere in 2025 where she's not today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to actually get better at trying to maybe integrate flash into portrait work on location.
Okay.
Something I really don't have time to do right now, but I'd like to do that just because I don't know. It just seems different. It seems more National Geographic. It seems like more just like curated. That would be cool. I feel like every photo shoot after I've done the shoot, I can always improve on things. The one thing that this main company I shoot for, two of the guys there were like my main champions who have followed me throughout my career to various places and always tried to pull me in. That's the thing with my industry, is as soon as you're somebody's, they want to bring you wherever they might go. And people in my industry move pretty lateral in between companies. So it's like, I might not then shoot for somebody for however many years until my person gets there, and then I'm in. And so one of the guys last year, we were on a Zoom call, and he goes, I want you to get weird. And I'm like, what? He goes, shoot the most creative, the most out of the box, the most strange, just like whatever you need to do to give me something I have never seen before. That is what I take to each shoot, and that is what I try to improve on. So if I need to shoot under something, over something, through something, around something, if I need to do a shot that is asking a saltwater fisherman to release, or a bass fisherman to release their bass like a trout, I will do that. Because it's different. It's not seen in the industry, and I want it to stand out, and I want it to be so different from these images we've been looking at on the front of like fishing magazines and grocery stores.
See,
so I would think that's
where a flash, a slow shutter speed.
Yes,
right?
but flash has been used in my industry for that stuff so heavily over the years that now I tease people about flashes on boats.
Really?
Where
But
I'm like,
what if you start to, right? If you're thinking weird, now you're gelling stuff. If you're doing like set it to tungsten and you use, Calvin set, like you really go
totally
to the extreme.
And part of what I do, though, unfortunately, is I deliver on quantity as well. Due to social media, I'm not delivering 200 images to a company. I'm delivering 1,200 finished images to a company. I'm shooting on average for a 4-day shoot, upwards of 9,000 to 10,000 images that I have to cull through because I have to shoot every angle, every aspect. And a lot of it is sequence, the cast. Perfect in the air. So it's heavy shooting. And unfortunately, what I'm shooting right now doesn't allow for me to slow it down and curate it. So that's been part of the problem is I want to integrate this, but it has not allowed me to slow it down yet to curate it. So I feel like it's going to be a very particular shoot where I can then take my time and be like, I'd like to light a little bit of this. Hey, can I make you hold a softbox for a few minutes, please? Mm-hmm. And I think our ability to have this very I have some LED panels that are small that I can hold in my hand. And I've done some Bassmaster Classic boat launches in the morning where I'm on dock and I'm just hired to document and it's dark. And so between my headlamp on my head and my LED light on the side, I can shoot some off camera, not flash. It's just easier to hold an LED and they're powerful enough. So I'm able to do a little bit of it, but really sitting down and curating something for a photo shoot for, say, a magazine or something, I'd love to do that more. I would like to be able to incorporate that, but I'm not there yet because I don't have time. So what I am doing is this film thing for 2023. I'm just going to do my own film project. I don't know if you're going to see it. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know how long. I mean, I did my first shoot of the year in Mexico a couple weeks ago, and I actually could not take a camera down there. It was a brand new client. It was a big client, and it was a big shoot. And I was like, I don't have time to faff around here. I need to just go and shoot and not be pulling a medium format film camera and be like, hey, I just want to do something personal here for a minute. Yeah. And there's a time and a place. So that's basically it. But yeah, I just want to be better at that and keep telling stories and being able to tell stories.
Tell me this. When did you decide to get in the water?
Okay, so there's a little misnomer. I don't want to lie to you. I don't have to get in the water that often.
Right. But but
walking
the camera
in the water.
Well, yes.
Okay.
But the camera, right? Because that was new. The housings were so expensive.
Okay. I thought you meant like me swimming. And I'm like, you could ask anybody and I'll be like, I'm not getting in that fucking water. And they're like, what? I'm like, I lean over the boat a lot and shoot with my split housing. And a lot of the time we have, a chase boat. So I'm able to line it up.
Sure.
So I actually got my first underwater housing. This is crazy because it was so expensive. It was the company out of
ridiculous.
California. Yeah. I mean, now it's not that crazy.
Now it's relatively inexpensive, yeah. I mean, we could get something for $1,000. It used to be $8,000.
So I actually have it on the wall over there, my first housing, and it's a surf housing, and it's Del Mar underwater housing. They're no longer in business. This company actually
a lot of them went.
They were custom made house. So I had it made from my Nikon D3 Pro camera. So the fact that I had balls to put a D3 in the water at the time, because that was my most expensive camera I'd ever purchased, was just $7,000, and I had to buy it on 2 credit cards and then pay it off. Don't do that. Buy things on credit cards, maybe when you're not making a huge income. But I managed to get it done, and that was fine. But they had a D3 in their office. Otherwise, I was going to have to ship it to them, and then they would custom make it to the camera and then ship it back. But I think the housing at the time was $3,500. This was back in 2008, maybe.
Yeah.
2009, 2008, maybe 2009, maybe, because I was still NHL stuff 2008. And then 2009, I started to do all this, this work, with the fishing lodge. And I was like, this could be really cool to add this in with this fishing lodge. Mm-hmm. And year after I shot for them, I shot for them on this one tournament. And then the next year they called me in the winter and they were like, we would like to build a photography program around you at the lodge where you basically are a souvenir photographer, where you sell people, clients, you build them books. And, that's where I took my school of hard knocks, was being a souvenir photographer. If you ever want to feel less than in life, become a souvenir photographer, where people like throw their black Amex at you and they're like, whatever. And they're not nice. And they ask you to go fetch them at the same time, which is like, what? I'm a photographer. My favorite is when people ask me what else I do on the side. And so I always say, well, do you ask your accountant what they're doing when it's not accounting season? So anyways, yeah. So I got this housing made so it was a long time ago. It was right at the start that I got the housing made. And then when I went to Panama with the housing, it was really cool. Surf housing off of a boat doesn't make sense, but I would hold it upside down, which would give me this much extra length because of the pistol grip on it.
Right.
Because the surf housings have a pistol grip on it. So I'd get about this much extra length that I could lean over the side of the boat when we had a marlin on, and I could shoot a marlin being held on the side of the line underwater. And that was really cool. And some tuna, like if we were by bait balls of tuna, I could just lean over the side of the big offshore boat with this pistol grip, hit the water line and below and shoot it. And I think it was built for a fisheye, but I actually managed to put a 20 millimeter f2.8 fixed lens in it. And that was a beautiful little setup with a big heavy camera. And I mean, a D3 is not light.
No, that's a brick.
And
yeah, because you have that beautiful marlin shot that you've got, that people talk about, where he's just being released and the bubbles are coming out and it's just perfectly
coming up,
framed. Yeah. Yes.
And a lot of that stuff is original stuff I shot. So when I went to Panama and I started shooting for this Canadian company, and then I met my husband randomly, a year later, we started dating and I ended up working for his company. So he had a private timeshare buy-in, 10 owners, 10 shares. And I kind of switched gears and started shooting for him and for his owners. And it was really cool because I ended up spending close to 5 years shooting in Panama. When you spend a lot of time doing one thing, 200 days a year of fishing, you get really good at it.
Yeah.
And if I was to jump on a boat, offshore boat right now and like think I could shoot marlin the same way I shot it back then, no, it would take a little while to get into keying of seeing, okay, that line is coming up. I know exactly where it's coming up. I know exactly where I need to be. And I always like to be down on the deck because I think the perspective looking back up at the fish is so much bigger than if you're just shooting it from the tower, you can just see the fish and then you just aim and shoot. And I just don't think, unless you're shooting down at your like fishing or with the angling, I guess is the right word, and the fish jumping to show action of the boat, like it loses it. So, when you're able to put in that much amount of time, you can build up a lot of stock. And at the time I was shooting weddings in the summer, and then I was shooting this marlin stuff for these private clientele. I couldn't work in the United States. I wasn't a commercial photographer here or anything. So, I think that I had a backlog, and I still do, of stock images that I still can sell to magazines today, even though they're 9-10 years old, taken with a 12 megabyte or megapixel camera. Nobody knows. So
you've switched to mirrorless now, though. I've seen you with Z stuff, right?
I have. So it was a really tough decision, but I came at it slowly. And about when Nikon finally released their first mirrorless, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy it. If I hate it, I just will sell it.
Okay, so why you waited for Nikon? Obviously, you're a Nikon shooter. You're loyal, but why not maybe 3 years ago tapping into Sony?
So originally Sony was having a lot of overheating problems.
Okay.
You remember that when they first came out, and they didn't have glass for a long time either.
Yeah. But I mean, since the A1 heavily, and, the
yeah, well, I mean, the A1 just came out.
Yeah.
I think I've had the Nikon since 2017 or 18.
Okay.
Whenever they dropped the Z6 and the Z7, the original.
Okay.
Or maybe those. 2018. So here's the thing. I liked being able to see my image live, and I liked the flippy screen.
Okay.
And having a live image on the flippy screen. Now, you're going to laugh at me, but the flippy screen, which I call it, because I like to call it a flippy screen, has changed the way I'm able to shoot effectively. Like, it's allowed me to get 99% more shots in focus than all the blind angles I would always have to shoot from. Super low on boats. Like, I can't always lay on the boat floor to shoot up, leaning over the side of the boat and shooting back to my angler. I can't see what I'm shooting. So you shoot blind so much, and you're like, you look at the back of the screen, you're like, oh no, I didn't nail focus. Okay, try again. And this is before eye tracking and all this.
Right.
So I had actually bought a little Sony A6500 to do some video because I was getting very interested in learning some video. So I was playing around with the camera, but it was really slow to boot up. And I had tried out some people's Sonys when they've been around me, and I've taken photos, but I was never wowed by the colors. And to this day, I am not wowed by Sony's colors. You got to help that camera along to get the beautiful image that it can create. You just got to nurse it a little bit, right? I own a Sony A7R IV. And then I own the rest Nikons, and the Sony A7R IV comes on every shoot with me, but I have 2 lenses dedicated to it. And the reason why I have it is because Sony made that 90mm f2.8 macro lens,
right?
And it is beautiful and it's very sharp. And at the time, Nikon has taken a really long time to roll out their Z glass. So because of that, I was like, you know what? I like this macro lens enough to buy a body. So I had this Sony A7R III, and now I have the 4, and I'm not going to get the 5 or the A1. I don't need to do that. The Sony A7R IV is a beautiful camera, and it's massive files.
Yeah,
so
huge.
Yeah, so I either use a 28 f1.4 Sigma lens on it, or I use the 35 f1.2 Sigma lens on it, and I have the 90mm with me. So I maybe take one of those primes with the 90, and that's always in my kit when I go on my shoots. But yeah, I stuck with Nikon because I have so much invested in it, so I could then start to adapt the glass. And yeah, I slogged through Nikon having crappy autofocus for a very long time. And so it wasn't until 2 years ago that I finally shipped my pro body Nikon off to KH Camera to sell. I finally was like, okay, this is the last one to go. I got rid of my D850, the D810. The D850, for people who don't know Nikon, is an iconic, incredible camera. I mean, I don't know if you could have made a better DSLR. Honestly, it is one of the best cameras I've ever shot with. And I probably shot, 350,000 images with that darn camera. I'm surprised my shutter still worked on it. It's just a great camera. It's just beautiful. It functions every way you needed it to function. And, so the way I look at it now is I'm not necessarily product specific. I'm whatever equipment I need to add to my arsenal to make me a better photographer. Okay. So I just never went the Canon route. I played with the Canon's, a 5 or 5D Mark III or the right. When those series came out and you could actually do video, like that was revolutionary. That camera changed the way cameras started to be made. And then next thing you know, everybody starts rolling out with their video.
Right.
And so I've played with all those cameras and I think they're great. And I think you could literally put any camera in my hand and I can create beautiful images with it. I would hope so. I would hope I could do that. Right. Give me your iPhone. I'll change a bunch of settings. I actually do a lecture on iPhone photography with fishing related. And I usually, and then everybody hands me their damn iPhone after to be like, how do I put it in RAW? And I'm like, so I think that being so heavily invested in one brand made it a little bit too financially daunting for me to go, okay, I'm going to jump ship to Sony at that point, which I didn't really want to. I don't actually like the ergonomics of the camera. I don't think it's very well, it doesn't feel nice in your hand. It's a brick. It does its job and it says thank you, collects his paycheck and goes home. It's not a beautiful design that you really like that I hold and I'm like, wow, that actually feels really comfortable grip for my hand and stuff. So
do you have big hands?
I think about that kind of stuff.
Small hands, long fingers?
Tiny little hands.
Okay.
And apparently Nikon originally was created to fit the hand of a woman originally. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I heard that as a fact a very long time ago. Huh. So that might need to be fact checked.
Okay.
I have tiny hands. So for me, have always felt so comfortable with Nikon and the menu systems. And I mean, Sony menus are just convoluted. And yes, I have quick menus. And yes, my Sony camera is basically set up the exact same way my Nikon camera is, with my quick menus. And I set up all my extra, like 1, 2, and 3 button on the Sony. Like, I have them set to very specific stuff. I actually shoot all manual. I don't shoot shutter speed priority. I don't shoot auto ISO. I am all manual, except for the underwater housing that is auto ISO.
Okay.
Just because once it's in there, you got to choose what you're doing.
Sure.
And I don't really need to change it a lot when I'm in there. I'm really on 1 or 2 settings off, maybe. So yeah, I'm not going to rag on Sony. I love my Sony, and I like shooting with it. And I love, when I've shot video, I actually shot a whole film with the original Z line, and it was in a major film festival as a feature film. So, I mean, you can create whatever you're totally focused on, and you can do a good job at it if you know what you're doing. It's the way I look at it.
Right.
So
talk about that. When did you start to dabble into video? When did that become something like you're like, next level?
I think YouTube University was that problem, because I do suffer from GAS, which is gear acquisition syndrome, right? Like, I love new tech. I love gear, and that all falls back to those film cameras. I like clicking things and shutter slaps and all that, which actually my Z, I shoot with 2 Z9s in my kit, and they're like an insane camera, and there's no shutter on it. It's all electronic.
Yeah,
it's so crazy.
It
has a fake noise. It's so weird. And there's a fake shutter noise. And I'm like, they could have programmed it to be like a cat's meow or something.
And the fake shutter noise is crap.
It's awful. Yeah. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. But I was watching a lot of YouTube. So I watch a lot of YouTube, but I'm not watching like people jumping off buildings YouTube. I'm watching gear reviews, how to edit, how to do video. I'm just somehow found myself on a path of watching video and watching mirrorless cameras and video. And I was like, that's cool. That would be kind of fun to be creative. So I ended up getting this Sony A6500 and just making short little videos, just playing around. And then soon I was getting asked by clients, at this point, your cameras have video capabilities. Mm-hmm. So now clients are like, can you just get a couple video clips too? And I'm like, sure. What else do you need me to go fetch your coffee? I guess is going to be the next thing you're going to ask me. So I started to see that the industry is changing in that regard. And I do believe if you don't adapt, you'll die like a dinosaur. And that's why a lot of these older guys in the industry are gone now, because we weren't going to adapt out of film to digital. They just weren't going to do it. It was too out there for them.
Or they treated digital like film, and they didn't realize they had to get stuff out immediately.
Yes. Yeah. And but it also, like, think about it. You're getting paid a ton of money to shoot a few photos, and you usually don't deliver your photos to your client within it's like 3 weeks maybe with film. And then it's like you're delivering like 20 selects, but now the standards are different because we can shoot high they bulk, they want more for their money. And yeah, in my industry, that's the way it is. If you are a very specific portrait fashion photographer, it's probably not like that. But for me, it's heavy content, as much content as possible, because they have so many different places they need this content to go. And every day they need content.
All the time.
All the time. It's never ending. It is never ending. And I'm okay with it. I'm just adapting to it, and I choose to adapt to it. And so I got the Sony A6500. It's a great little camera. The whole A line of they're fun cameras. And I was shooting, and people were then asking for video clips. So I'm like, yeah, I could take it with me. But I was really annoyed with how long it took to turn on. Like, Nikons are just on. Like, you're talking about like in an industry where I don't have a second. I need the camera just to be on. And autofocus was okay at the time. I think they then released like 2 more cameras after that in the A line. I can't remember. But so as soon as Nikon released their mirrorless, I was like, okay, if they're wanting me to shoot video, well, this is my avenue into it. But it just took them a really long time. Now, a couple things. Nikon doesn't really make a new camera every year just to make a new camera every year. They give you firmware updates. So the cameras I had then, I don't own the Z7 and Z6 anymore. I have the Z6 II, and then Z9s. And so, I have two Z6 IIs, two Z9s, which are their flagship camera, and then the Sony. And because of those firmware updates, those cameras aren't the same as what they originally were. So when everybody absolutely just bashed them and teared into them, it's like, hold on. They're still giving us firmware updates for a 4-year-old camera. And it's changed it. It's like night and day different. And yeah, maybe the eye tracking won't be as eye tracking as Sony, but you know what? Generally Sony's won't track a fish eye. So I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't matter all the time to me. Like I literally need mass body tracking. Don't lose that body. And so, yeah, I just had suddenly the capability with that Z7 or Z6, I can't remember which was the first one, to really incorporate quick video. And the nice thing, again, yes, I am, I guess, a Nikon fangirl because I'm heavily invested. But I do find when I on my Sony, when I want to go into video, you either press the video button and then you wait a second, or you hit 1, 2, or 3, where I had like 4K, 24 frames. Two would be, 1080, 120, 3 would be whatever. I'd have it all set. So just, you toggle it to 1 and I'm already ready to go. There's a delay. And if you're a Sony shooter and you've only ever shot Sony, you won't notice it. But when you come from Nikon, where you hit your switch and it's on, there is no delay.
Yeah.
So Nikon, I think Canon has it now too, where on the outside of the Nikon, you just hit the switch up and it goes to video. Mm-hmm. And then you hit the switch down, it goes back to stills. And then, so that allowed me to quickly, like I would bang off the stills really quickly and I'd hit it to video, press record, follow. Okay. Records off, back into stills. And the versatility and the hybridness of it, I guess, allowed me to get more content for my client in a way that I've never done before. That was like, okay, well, I can only do it with this one mirrorless because I only own one mirrorless.
And that's the goal.
And yes, you could shoot.
Right? That's the goal.
And yes, you could shoot is to make a happier client. I want them to call me again.
Right.
And you could do video on your DSLR, but the tracking it's not the same. It's the image on the screen isn't as fast. You're highly limited. And yes, people have made really creative work with DSLRs and, with your Canon 5D Mark, whatever. But it's night and day different once you get into phase detection, autofocus and everything. So I'm really excited where the industry is right now with cameras. I think it's definitely a faster learning curve for people.
Oh,
but
yes.
being able to dabble in film, I find to be fun. But so I made this film back in 2019, and it was in 2020 in the Fly Fishing Film Festival, which is the largest film festival for fly fishing in North America, and it's owned by Warren Miller Corporation.
Oh,
and my film was chosen to be in it, and it was really cool. Unfortunately, 2020, as we know, it was not on location. It was you had to pay for it online and watch it and everything. So it was a little different. But
what did I miss?
I don't know. But there's a balloon above us right now, so I don't know what's going on. And so I shot that film. It was a lot of work. I shot it in Christmas Island. I went there to shoot a film. I said, I'm going to do this. I went with a group of people I know. I hit up sponsors afterwards. I shot a film. I shot content for a magazine, and I shot stills for a brand. I put a lot on my plate, and I made it a very undesirable experience for myself. And after I finished it, I was like, okay, I could keep making personal short little films, which maybe I'll do at some point here. I just honestly haven't had time. I've been just really busy working commercially. But there definitely is a reason why film productions have a lot of people on it.
Oh, yeah, they do.
It is a lot of work. And I came to realize that, yes, it is a lot of work to be the only person with all of this, trying to get every angle possible. And you feel like you're kind of lacking in everything. You don't feel like you're excelling in each part.
Right. I wish I had an
coming
audio
up with
guy.
the storyline.
Right. I wish I had a producer.
Or the second shooter.
Yes.
The second shooter just to get another angle.
Mm-hmm.
And So I did that project. I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of where it went. I'm proud that we had the first all female cast of anglers in this, in the Fly film tour. I'm the second female director, filmmaker, producer person to have a film in it. So, I think that was great. A good check mark, pat on the back, made a goal of in 2020 that was on the list, like my film is for this year. And I did it. And I thought to myself, okay, I want to keep doing what I love to do, which is stills. And so last year I got hired for a bunch of video work, but it was all very like clinical. It was like, okay, it was a lot of talking heads and going through gear and equipment. So it was very different. I made short 30 to 15-second ads for a clothing company for online only. So I'm not out here trying to pretend like I'm this insane editor and filmmaker. I'm bumping my way through it.
But it's a tool.
But I have the capability.
Right. But it's a tool in your toolbox. And for young photographers, they need to realize, I use this analogy a lot when I lecture is you don't want to be a buck knife, right? And only shoot, fishing, or you only shoot football, or you only shoot hockey, but you want to be like a Swiss Army knife and have multiple tools to be able to do stuff. So for you, picking up video, that gave you an extra wrench.
And again, when I have clients saying, hey, can you do this for us? As long as I feel like I can do a good job at it and deliver, talk with them about what they're really looking for and the expectations, and I'm going to do it. And I can offer it as an extra. So yeah, I have definitely done that for some clients. And then some clients, like my main one I shoot for every once in a while, but they're finding a lot with the algorithm that if I can grab a couple clips on my iPhone of video, vertical, those actually do better. So quickly I'll do that for them. And again, like if I can add this into my product and charge appropriately for it, there is so much value in it. And I don't want to die on the vine. I don't want to not adapt enough in this industry that one day I'm not relevant, because I am 40 and I am photographing mostly. I'll run into YouTubers at Bassmaster Classic. I'll go to like the largest fishing event in the United States. And I'm like, they'll come up and introduce themselves to me and they're like, oh, we really love your work. And I'm like, thanks. And I'm like, who are you shooting for? And like, oh, I have a YouTube channel. And I'm like, cool. And they're like 20. So, I see what's coming and that's cool and that's great. But I think that in the end, my experience in everything I've shot hopefully will put me at the front of the list for a client who is looking for quality, who's looking for a really experienced person who's not going to fuck up the shoot.
Right. No, that's key.
So I've had I've heard horror stories. They'll be like, oh yeah, this one, like big companies will hire someone and they'll like, the person will get sent to like this really like remote island somewhere where it's cool and fun and you're on this tropical shoot and they'll get hammered and they won't show up for call in the morning.
Right.
Like I can tell you right now, like I like my wine when I'm here in Montana, but I can tell you right now, when I'm on location, I go like, I'm there to work. I'm there to get the product done. I'm not there to faff around. I want to give them the best product because every image I take, my name is stamped to that. Mm-hmm. And that means a lot to me. That is actually the biggest thing. And I just did a shoot 2 weeks ago where huge client for me, and they did not want me to do any image selection or culling or post-processing. And I'm like, wow, okay, but you'll pay me that? Okay. I can't say I really like it. It was a great, I think the shoot went really well. We got beautiful imagery. I can't do anything with the images. You're never going to see those images on my website. That's content I shot for them, exclusively for them. Mm-hmm. And we won't see it till product launch. And I have no idea what they have selected. I have no idea how many they have selected. I have no idea how they're going to edit it. And that scares me. So I am working on losing that control part and realizing that sometimes those larger clients, that's how they work. Right. And some people hire me for the look that I can produce for them. And some people hire me. And then that job in particular, I think was a specific job that I was hired for because of my experience, because I can go and do that shoot.
Right.
But
that says a lot about you. That says that they trust you to produce what they want, regardless whether it's your style or the art director or the creative director said, do this, do that. They pay you the money and say, young lady, give us a hard drive. We're done. You can see it when the program comes out, the catalog or whatever.
They walked away with the hard drive from the shoot. Like literally I handed it to them and they would go through it every night to make image selection. I'd be like over his shoulder looking. I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And I finally said to him, cause the one guy said to me, hey, those images you took of like the one girl walking by the palm leaves, like that's not really our style. And I said, oh, I absolutely know that. I said, but my flow is I keep shooting. So if I have to be goofy for a minute with my model to get her like excited or get her like laughing and I got to be goofy, be like, walk through the bushes and just move them away like you're a model or something. Like I will do that. I'll shoot those frames. But I said to him, you have to remember, most brands would never ever see that content. And he goes, oh yeah. And I was like, I would have called that out heavily. So you wouldn't ever see it. You're seeing me at my most vulnerable here. Sure. You're seeing every missed focused frame or every time he was,
You're nude.
Every time he was, oh, totally. It's just open for interpretation. But the one thing is every once in a while I look over my shoulder and I would be like, look at that histogram. And he would start laughing. I'm like, nailed my histograms like every time. Because at this point with mirrorless cameras, that's the one thing you shouldn't mess up anymore is your exposure. So, like you might lose your autofocus, but you better be nailing your histograms with the fact that you can see it live. And so every single time I did look over his shoulder, because I told him, I can't watch you do this. This is too stressful for me. And he actually found it pretty humorous because that's just not something I do in this industry. And so anytime I was like, man, but look at that histogram. And I'm like, can you just zoom in? I just want to see how sharp look how sharp that was.
It's a very difficult thing because you are really stripped down. I mean, it's like taking the robe and throwing it and standing there nude with your camera and working and going, okay, please don't judge me in the moment. Wait till I'm done. It's really rough. It's rough, but that's how a lot of upper end certain clients, that's how they roll.
That is exactly how it works. And and I'm just one photographer out of many photographers they would hire to shoot different aspects of their brand. And they have some pretty damn big names shooting for them. So for me, my husband said when I got home and I was explaining to him, he goes, cash that paycheck and smile and know you did a good job. And you did your job. And that was it. And so I know we got beautiful imagery out of it. I did I told him one day, I said, cause we were talking about it and he didn't really have experience in the industry of the fishing part. And I just said, I know we're not here specifically for that, but I'm good at this. So if let me direct these people, I'm really good at this. And he was like, okay. And I said, you're really good at knowing how all of this needs to look on them, but like, I'm good at this. So I got this. And he was like, okay. So, I think we made beautiful imagery, whether or not it's perfect for what they're looking for. I hope so. That's harder to know, if it's not articulated, but I know, for any brand in the industry that I shoot for regularly, I think that we would have had more than happy clients. So yeah, it was a great experience. It does suck though to shoot a lot of really nice photos and be like, oh, never see the light of day, but
bye.
Okay. Bye. Yeah. So that was my warm up of 2023 and being like, okay, well, at least I haven't had to edit this whole week. I've had a week off,
Walk me through your process. What's your thoughts when you're leaving on a shoot soon? What are you thinking? How do you, it's yes, keep yourself fresh, but understand your style, but maybe evolve a little bit. Is each client kind of different? What's your thought process?
Yeah. So, I don't really think about the shoot specifically about like if I'm going to get good photos or not. Like I already am rolling at a high anxiety level as a human being, but that's the weird thing. The one thing I'm not really stressed out about is I know we're going to create good imagery. I just hope, I can't do anything about weather. I hope I have anglers that are at least enthusiastic and excited because that can make it just a really long, challenging day. And when I have someone who doesn't want to participate, it's like, well, why did you show up? Like, just go home. I'm better off shooting my boat driver who's just here to drive my boat for me. Like, which I have done before, where it's kind of like, I'm not getting what we need out of this guy. So, hey, could you pick up a rod and wear that clothing for a minute? I'm going to shoot you for a minute. Or someone's sick on a shoot and you can't really get them. If they're sick, you can't really get them to be motivated. But so my process is I like to really communicate with the company I'm going to shoot for. I don't like going down there blind about knowing where we're going to be. I actually really like to know, okay, day 1, we're shooting this. Day 2, we're going to shoot that. Maybe we need to flip them, but this is what we're doing. I don't necessarily need a whole shot list from you because some companies will send me a shot list and it's like, hand on reel, a 45-degree angle and casting to your left. Like, I feel like the creative aspect of it is it's okay. That's taken care of. But I don't feel like that I need a written out list for list for list, unless you have this one advertising shot you need and it's so specific that I need to shoot it. Because generally those are all the shots I'm going to take anyways, right? But I need to know brands. I need to know names of the brands I'm shooting. So sometimes I'm shooting multiple brands within one company. Mm-hmm. So whether that's a bunch of different rod brands within one company or a rod with a bunch of rods with a bunch of names. And I need to know the reels or the line or the baits or the lures or all the different sunglasses or whatever. Like, I like to know what I'm shooting. And I also get sent on shoots a lot where I don't have a representative with me. Sometimes it's just me and the angler and we arrange the time. I get sent with an outline of what we're needing to accomplish and we go and do it. Wow. Especially during COVID. It was mostly me during COVID. I like having a brand representative there because a lot of the time I always say this to them. I'm not in your weekly meetings. I don't sit there at the launch of a product. I don't know the specifics behind it unless you tell me. I don't know what makes that so special unless you tell me. And I'd love for you to tell me so I can key in on it. But that's why it's great if someone does show up, because not only do I have someone to hold a camera if I need it, because I'm in an industry where they won't pay for assistance, or I'm at a time of the industry, like a time in photography where it's like just as light as possible, as light as can be and head to your shoot. And so if I have a representative there, it's great because that also allows me to have them and have their ear and be like, would you use this rod for this form of fishing? Or what do you think about this shot? So I like actually having a creative person with me because I think more creative minds can just make better stuff.
Sure.
And looking at me for 6 to 9 hours a day, expecting that my brain can function creatively for 6 to 9 hours a day is just crazy. And so sometimes we'll get past fish number 20 and I'll look at the whole group and be like, anybody got an idea of how to shoot this fish differently? Because I'm done. Like,
I'm fresh out ideas.
My brain is shut off. And so sometimes an angler will be like, hey, I always thought this might be a really cool image. And I'll say, hey, let's try it. I have no problem with it if it's if it's inserted at the right time. Sometimes when I have people over my shoulder and they're like, oh, could you shoot this angle? And I'll start to get a little bit hangry and annoyed and like,
Back away.
They're like, yeah, okay. Like, so I can be a little testy at times when it comes to that. But for the most part, it's like, yes, if I have the client there with me or a representative, it's always a representative in the company. They're big companies. So it's not like I have the president of any company there. There's no reason for a president to call me as far as I'm concerned. Like marketing people need to keep calling me. Like if the president calls me, I've done something wrong, I think.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's just kind of how we work. And then, like I just before I talked to you today, I went over a call for the Monday shoot, fly in. We're going to meet Monday night. We'll have dinner. We'll go through our shot list for the next morning, show up on location. We've got the models and the boat captain all lined up and exactly what we're going to be shooting. And he said he didn't make a detailed list. And I said, that's totally fine. Just outline products. So we can at least tick products off the list to make sure we didn't miss a product. And we'll flow from there. And that's kind of how I roll. And I don't know, it's organized, disorganized. Like it's always organized. I just like in terms of, I want to know where I'm going to be, what time and when. I don't like it when people are late. If you can help it, do not be late for the photo shoot because the sun doesn't wait for you.
Right.
You're not special enough.
Right. You're not that special.
I'm not that special. It's not waiting on us, so we need to go.
It's moving. It's moving. Yeah, exactly.
God, I've had one guy called me once. He's like, I'm at the gas station. Do you guys want coffee? And I'm like, dude, the sun is coming and we're now at the boat ramp waiting on you. And the sun is not waiting on anybody. And then it's going to rain all day today. So if you don't get your butt here, like
coffee doesn't do me any good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, coffee on shoots does me good, but coffee here, no. But so yeah, that's just kind of how it rolls. That's the format I'm in. It hasn't always been like that, but that seems to work really well for what I'm shooting now. So
where you're at now. If money was no object, what would you be shooting?
Editorial magazine pieces of like really cool people and their crafts, showing them in their environmental portraits of what they do and how good they are at it, and just trying to do like black and white cool images of them. Like Angler's Journal has a winter edition out right now, and I have photos in it, and then someone wrote the story separately. But I had actually submitted a lot of black and white images. Now, none of the images are shot in black and white. They're all shot in color, right? Sure. I just happened to make some edits in black and white. They actually kept all the original black and white images. And I was like, so when the magazine came out, I was like, yes. I was like, hell yeah. 2 years ago, I had a goal to have a film image published in a magazine. They didn't even know it was a film image. It was just a really cool portrait of a black and white taken on my Leica. And it got published in the magazine, and they didn't even know it was film. And nobody asked because it was scanned, right? So it's like, if I could just editorial, like I love getting covers. I love the idea of somebody or thousands of somebodies or hundreds of thousands of somebodies physically holding an image of mine in their hand. That is cool. That is cool. Just like, that is what I wanted as a photographer, was to have a photo in the newspaper. What is like the Vancouver Sun newspaper? Like that to me is the coolest thing. So I've dabbled a little bit in writing at times with help from editors and written some stories and gotten stuff published. But for me, like putting together a cool photo essay, and then I'll email the editors I have relationships with and kind of pitch it to them and say, this is kind of the background behind these photos. And then a lot of the times they can find a writer to write the story, or I find someone to write the story, or someone was on the trip with me who then I could assign to write the story. And then we submit it as a piece. Yeah. And, I think there's few magazines that kind of let you do that, but it's the smaller, like quarterly magazines that are more niche, that are looking to make more of a coffee table magazine than just a monthly throwaway.
Right.
And so, magazine financially, they can vary from $90 a cover to $2,000 a cover. So I pick magazines that I want to be in, and I send only certain images that I find that I really think are a beautiful image that maybe I know a commercial company wouldn't use, because, well, I shot a beautiful artsy image, like a gorgeous landscape with a fisherman. It's all silhouetted. And I know maybe a company only is tech, but I happened to see this image, so I had to shoot it. Well, if that's the case, then I'll find a home for it. As long as the companies are okay with it, I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, you mind if I throw this like this on the cover of something for you? Like, this could be cool for your advertising. And it's kind of my passion. And so I'm really lucky to work with some companies that are like excited about that for me. And I appreciate that, because I'm in a very special spot with that.
Yeah.
With the copyrights and NDAs and all that, everybody wants to overcomplicate it. And I just want to have pictures on magazines.
Best photo
but I have to pay my bills. Oh man. Well,
if someone says to you, Jessica, make me a print, I want to hang it in my office, what print is that? What do you give me?
Well, I'm trying to think of so I have it's funny. I have all the reject prints in my house. They're all like, I have a large format printer here. If anybody wants to buy it, needs to go. I don't use it anymore. Yeah, it just needs to go. It takes up so much floor space, and I'd love to put a bookshelf there. So I would say my most favorite image I've taken, maybe my most favorite on film, is a shot I took of my dad in, I actually have a series of the negatives on a contact sheet framed on my wall, and it's him holding a mug with his Westerly hat, and it was in studio, and I shot it on like a fancy Mamiya, one of the nice Mamiyas, in college or in photography school. And I love that series of images. I'm really proud of the image I have up on my wall right now. I've gotten a lot of comments about it. It's these horses in Wyoming that are not wild horses. Everybody's like, those wild horses. And I'm like, anybody can go take this image. I just happened to go there and get it right at the right time. For me, it's not so much necessarily the image. It's the moment behind the image. Right. It's what happened to make that image that makes it more special for me than actually physically taking the photo. So, I have a beautiful image of a killer whale coming up with a rainbow behind it. But I was on the boat. I was on a little raft by myself up in off the coast of Haydahl, super stormy, rain shower coming through, and a killer whale pops up next to me and a rainbow is happening. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm by myself and the lens is so covered in mist from the rain that I am snapping away. And in Photoshop, I had to really bring back everything because of how much it was fine mist. Thankfully, it wasn't large drops. So there was no distortion in the image, but I had to really bring back colors. But I love that image because where the hell would that happen just randomly? No. So that's what makes images like special for me. Or I have these images of these three ladies from Peru, these portraits hanging in my house that I had to pay them to have their photo taken, rightfully so. You know, we don't want to just, they want to get paid. So I paid them money to take a black and white photo. But like that whole experience, I was by myself backpacking in Peru. I was sick from a bacterial infection in my stomach. I was trying to make my way. I had altitude sickness at 15,000 feet. And I ran across these three different ladies and I took their photo. So that's what makes photos like special to me. It's not, I could take a beautiful image, but it might not hold that weight if it wasn't something momentous happening. There's just so much more behind just clicking that shutter. Every image for me generally invokes a moment in time of my life.
Yeah. All right, so tell me the one that broke your heart, the one that got away, out of focus, didn't develop, blown shutter.
I mean, there's so many Marlin ones that could have been insane. It was like the fish jumped the wrong direction. There was a roll of film that. Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, or they jump and then suddenly water sprays up at the wrong angle, and you're like, no, that could have been perfect. There is this one time that I remember I messed up a roll of film and there was an image that I took that I think was really beautiful. And it was really basic. It was just a long curving dirt road with a really old truck that happened to come up the road. And it was black and white. I think there was hills in the background, beautiful trees. And I remember taking this series of images and thinking, oh, this is really beautiful. Like this car. And I remember how I messed up the roll in the darkroom and I lost all of it. And that today, like that was a long time ago. And that today I always randomly think of when I'm like shooting film. I'm like, oh, I messed up that roll. It could have been my husband always says that I'm going to have to sell some sort of, Ansel Adams, and then we'll become millionaires eventually, and then we can just do whatever we want. And I said, so he had to die to become a millionaire, yeah, right?
Ansel,
we know this. That
Ansel was
images are not.
Yeah, he ended his career.
Yeah,
doing
like
workshops.
his images are now worth millions. Yeah, but he's not here to enjoy it. So,
my professor. But
there is one.
My professor worked under him, and when at the end of his career, you could have gone to Carmel. And when he was teaching workshops randomly on weekends, you and I could have just walked up on a Saturday and taken a 3-hour workshop, and you could have bought
so cool
moon over whatever Mexico, whatever it is for like $50.
Yeah. That's amazing. Done. I mean, I think what's so special about his work as well is just how incredible metering he was in the zone system and his printing. I mean, this is insane. Right. And when you go back to shooting film after not shooting it for a while, you're like, wow, I really mess up a lot. You're like, wow, I don't have a handle on any of this. It's so good we don't shoot in film anymore.
I have no zone system whatsoever.
No. I'm like, okay, the light meter shows this. We're just going to shoot this. So, I don't know. I think that, it's interesting. I think part of me having a hard time articulating what a favorite image is because of how heavy I have to shoot now, that I shoot a lot of images. And, when you come out of a shoot with 5,000 images, are you going to, unless you get one that's like, wow, that's really a special moment. You might have gotten you got beautiful imagery, but like those really special moments happen very selectively and they don't happen every shoot. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about something where you're like, oh crap, that's a very special image. So, I definitely think I've gotten them, but it's hard after hundreds of thousands of images to pinpoint. But I think also like I have a marlin photo that I'm really proud of up on my wall, and it's of a marlin jumping and its blue eye is looking directly at me. I was in a chase boat. And at the time I was photographing my husband's boat and I didn't know that was his boat. I didn't know him. And it was my very first marlin I ever saw. And he radioed our captain. He knew that I was photographing, and we had the company I was shooting for, their clients were with him that day for some reason. They rented him or something. And so he radioed our captain and said, you can back in if you want. We're going to have control of this fish in a second. Like he read the situation, and I had a big 300 weight and I braced myself, and I've never shot marlin fishing. And I see this thing, it looks like a dinosaur. So I'm spraying and praying. I mean, I'm just taking every action photo every experience I've had shooting NHL or MLS soccer, or when I shot CFL football or a couple NBA games when they'd visit us in Vancouver. I am just spraying and praying. And, that fish comes up, it turns, and it's looking at me, and I have it blown up big in my studio here. And I've actually got that shot on 2 different covers, and I'm really proud of that image because I had no clue how special it was. I had no clue that you generally don't have a chase boat when you're offshore fishing. That usually you don't ask your boat, the other boat, to come back in that close. Everything lined up to allow that to happen. That has never happened to me again. I've never had that opportunity to shoot that specific type of image again.
Wow.
So it just, that's special to me. So like that image of a marlin jumping, it's not technically anything insane. I just sprayed and prayed, but everything had to come together to allow that. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough when you shoot so many. I don't know if you find that. I mean, you just take so many pictures. It's like, I have 30,000 images on my damn iPhone. It's so like, true.
So true.
But I did, when we first started, I did tell you I ordered something. So I have a new camera arriving Monday. I have decided, I convinced myself the other day that I don't take my cameras really out of my case when I'm home. I clean my gear, I put it back in. They are my work tools. Maybe I'll grab one once in a while, but I actually don't have a feeling of wanting to grab out my big cameras to take pictures at home up my driveway. I usually use my iPhone for it. And I've had smaller point and shoot mirrorless cameras before. And it's more of an opportunity for me to grab a film camera, but I decided that I would be grabbing, I would purchase the Fuji X Pro 1. Or X Pro 3, sorry, X Pro 3. So it's a 3-year-old camera. And I've shot with a Fuji before years ago, and I love the nostalgic look behind. I love Fuji. I think they do a beautiful job, but I was like, I want a rangefinder digital camera that's not a $5,000 Leica. I would love one, but am I really going to spend $5,000 on a point and shoot camera just to like, I know the Q2 is gorgeous, but just like, am I going to buy it just so I could flash it around at coffee shops? Like, I'm just not going to do that. Financially, that's just a terrible decision on my part. So, everything's sold out right now. It's so hard to get Fuji, 100V, the small point and shoot, which is, a fixed lens, the Fuji XE4, that's all sold out. And I've always loved the look of the X Pro series. I wanted an X Pro one originally when they first launched, just as a fun camera, but they were really expensive at the time. But the X Pro 3, I mean, it's not a cheap camera, but I want to have it with one prime fixed lens on it. So I got the 18, which is equivalent of a 27 or 28 or something. And that's going to be my fun camera. So I'm excited. It arrives while I'm gone. So when I get home, that's going to be it's not even that small, but, I would like just to take that around and be able to get back to just shooting for fun more when I have an opportunity to.
Good.
So
we should do more of that. As photographers,
we need to do more of that.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. I got a cases full of all my gear in here, but it's like, do I really want to break out all my cases to go shoot one moment, which is the worst thing to say, but it's true. It's a lot of work.
It is. And I like the Fuji looks, the presets they have of film. Yeah, I'm shooting film at the same time, but I like that idea. I actually like the idea of shooting presets on JPEGs and just wirely transferring it to my phone and posting it that way for fun. Like, I'm actually okay with that because I'm basically doing that with my iPhone, right? So, so I'm excited. I just thought I needed a little bit of a change this year. I'd like to document more on my cycle bike rides. I'd like to kind of tell more stories when I'm out on my gravel bike and I'm, venturing out with a friend. I don't know. I just want to shoot more. That's not just my iPhone. That actually is a little bit more beautiful depth of field kind of looking. That's kind of what I'm wanting. And I love rangefinders. And the EVF, I used to own the original Fuji X-E1 and it was slow and it was awful and the autofocus was terrible and the EVF was weird. And they have definitely improved greatly in the whole Fuji lineup and everything. And so I like the idea of being able to have an optical viewfinder along with their EVF on it, and you can go back and forth. So if you want to shoot more traditional, you can. It's a very niche camera, but I think I'm their niche. So I fit into, if you want to sell me something that is like old school retro, yet still functional, I'm your person. I'm targeted so well on social media by ads. I'm the perfect person to target. I will snap onto that. So yeah, that's like kind of just what I'm hoping for and shoot a little bit of that and just enjoy the process again. Cause it's not saying that I don't enjoy it. I love what I do, but I'm also love having a camera in my hand at most times, but I'm not loving taking a huge pro body with me to go to the park with my dogs.
Right. Yeah. It's a beast.
Yeah. And I want something a little nicer than my iPhone photos.
Right.
So
if you could be queen for a day, what would you change in the photo industry?
Man, I don't know. I think that I just get, I've said it before, I just get bogged down with the fact that I think people focus too much on what they want to do rather than putting in the process behind it. And so I wish the photo industry would fight to keep magazines and newspapers alive. So I'd love to change that. I'd love to show the value in that. I think though, for the most part, the cameras are becoming so incredibly capable and so intelligent that there shouldn't be a barrier to being like insanely creative. So I'm hoping just to see different kinds of imagery now. I'm hoping that the industry really sees how amazing it is and how amazing it is to shoot with these cameras and able to like translate that to for us to start seeing that product,
Right.
See it from time to time, but I don't know. Maybe that queen for a day. I'd probably just eat delicious food, and I would go buy myself a Leica Q2. I can tell you that right now. And I'd buy an M10 and I'd buy an M6 film camera. And, I'd probably buy the silver version of the Q2 just because it's extra flashy.
Yeah, just so you can lay it on thick. Yeah.
Just so I can just hold it out there and show it off. I did start looking at some of the digital Leicas and I was like, financially, like, yeah, you can buy an older Leica digital camera, but you're still going to drop, I think at the bare minimum, it was like $3,000. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, but do I want that old of technology where it's so far behind? Will I just be frustrated? That's what I thought. I was like, I'll have beautiful Leica glass, but I think I might just be frustrated with the I'm not great at manual focus. Like I feel like I'm just slightly blind. I'm just not focus peaking at all. And so I kept looking at them, and I kept looking at used ones off KEH and everything. And I was like, financially, I think Fuji, as coined the poor man's Leica at times, is just a better financial option, because I think I'm going to be happier with how the technology is newer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I thought about it. And when
to spend that
if
kind of
I'm
money
shoot
and be
a Leica,
frustrated, that would drive you nuts.
Yeah, or just be limited a little bit. If I'm going to shoot a Leica, I'm going to pick up that beautiful M3 I have sitting over there, because for me, Leica is film. And maybe I'd want to get an M6 one day where I have like a bit of a newer system of loading film, because it's a little slow on that Leica. But like for me, Leica is that film camera. Is like you can't get more pure Leica than that camera that I have there. That original camera from the 60s.
Yeah,
so,
that's straight up that is what Leica is.
That is what it is. That's the cream of the crop. And guess what? That camera does not have a little red dot on it to make you famous, to make you popular at the coffee shop.
No, it's just, it's a Leica.
It's just a Leica. You would never know it unless you saw the top of it, or unless you're a camera geek. So,
exactly.
So yeah, queen for a day. I'd make some better backpacks too. No one seems to be able to make me the right backpack out there. I've gone through so many.
What are you looking for? What do you need?
I want to have a pocket I can still put my water bottle in, because everybody seems to get rid of that. I like the interchangeable camera units. I'm definitely on that. I'm on the put in a unit, pull it out, and break my bag down. Sometimes I'm on really little planes where even the backpack won't fit in the overhead. Mm-hmm. But if you pull the core unit out and you have it zipped up, it's much smaller. You can fit it in. Then you can collapse your whole bag on top of it and put it in the top. Just get on an Alaskan Airlines flight and they look at you and they're like, that won't fit. You need to a la carte it. I'm like, just watch me. I got this. And so, I want some better straps fitted for women's bodies. I find that a lot of the time I'm 5'9", but I don't really have a long torso. It's all in my legs. That's where the tallness comes from. So for me, I have short arms and a short torso, and most of the backpacks, almost every backpack is obviously their fit models are dudes. I mean, they're not women. Let's be honest here. I actually just finished my pro team staff with f-stop. It ended this year, and I've now purchased a Shimoda bag. They have arm straps specifically that you can order. If you're a woman, you can choose it if you want. And so that bag hasn't shown up yet. So I'm interested to see how that bag is. And waterproofness. Why do we just make them DWR, like coated? Why can't we just make them waterproof? What is wrong with people? Like, I just want them waterproof. When I'm sitting on a boat and eventually waterproofness goes away. It only lasts so long. Right. But if you make me a bag made out of waterproof material, I can tell you that's going to last. My batteries have gotten wet. My drone the other day through 4 layers got wet because of the amount of water I was around. And so I do travel with Pelican cases, and that's primarily how I shoot. But I usually have to have my backpack with like an extra layer in it. I'll put my batteries in it, my drone and my cards in it, and that kind of just sits off to the side. And so just a really waterproof backpack, like truly. So I actually washed my f-stop bag the other day. I washed it from the salt water and I resprayed it. So I hope for this trip that will last until this new bag arrives. But, and that's no fault of them. It's just, it probably costs more, costs more to manufacture it. But I would like that, or just make it as waterproof as can be and have a pouch for my water bottle.
Well, I know the owners of Think Tank. I'll give Doug a call and let him know to get in touch with you and say, hey.
Yeah, I've never ran Think Tank. I actually have a Think Tank insert in my new PK something Pelican. It's not a Pelican case.
Right, but it's the insert.
Was on it. The insert. I was on a shoot in San Diego. I landed in San Diego and the airline smashed my Pelican case. It didn't smash where things broke, but all the latches and buckles, it was barely holding on when it came out of the thing. Like it was broken. And so I was like, crap. Yeah. I'm like, what did they do to break a Pelican case? So I'm in San Diego. I find a camera store. I call them up. They don't have exactly what I need, but I go in and I look and they have this brand I've never heard of, made in California, just outside of San Diego. It's PK something or P something. And I open it up and there's a full think tank built out, insert, top, lid, everything. It's actually looking really nice. And I was like, okay, well, it's actually quite a bit more due to the fact that it's got this beautiful insert in it. And I had no choice. I needed to buy it. It's a bit bigger than what I would normally use. But now that's become my like travel packing one. I roll a Pelican case on the plane with me just for my cameras. And then the underwater housing and drone and everything goes into this one I check. And so, yeah, I really like the insert. I think it's actually very functional. It's got great zippers, waterproofing on the inside of the lid, which I always find super interesting. And it's just really nice. And so I have never really looked into the think tank line that much because I was on contract with a couple different bag brands over the years. And now I'm not. They said they're changing up their pro line and they said you can either opt in or out. And after dealing with 2 waterproof issues where I was like, you know what? I think I just need to find something different. And there's no knock on them. They do a great job, but for what I do, it's just so specific that I think it's just not excelling for me. Yeah. And I don't want to just get a dry bag where I roll up a dry bag. That's not functional as a photographer. You can't like
not. You gotta get in and out
of a dry bag.
Yeah. That does not do you any good. When I grow up, I want to be you.
I appreciate that, but like, I'm not like, it sounds like I'm really passionate about what I do, but my life overall, like outside of that isn't insanely exciting.
No. You're married to a Texan. You live in Montana. You got a yellow lab. You still have the yellow lab?
2. We have a white lab. Yeah, we have a white lab and a yellow lab. We almost lost the white about 4 weeks ago, but thank God she is okay.
How?
She had I was skiing, cross country skiing with them, and suddenly she just didn't look well. And we got back to the house and she really wasn't looking good. And just something seemed super off, and she's 7. And so we were like, this is weird. And then finally I made the call at night. I was like, we need to go to the emergency vet. And we were visiting my in-laws' place. We were 3 hours from a city. And so husband loaded her into the car, and we had a friend's dog, another dog, and then we had a mule and a horse up at this area. So he couldn't just like go, but I could go. So I was like, put her in the car and I'm going. So in the middle of the night, driving through Montana winter, got her 3 hours, got her to the emergency vet. Turned out she had a tumor on her spleen that ruptured. No idea she had a tumor growing. Had a liter of blood in her stomach, and they did emergency surgery. They did a blood transfusion, and she's alive and with us today, thankfully. And the tumor ended up being benign. I mean, it's just like crazy. If I hadn't taken her in, she would have not lived through the night. So I have a white lab and a yellow lab, and one's recovering, but she's doing good. And I love living here in Montana, and it's geographically undesirable for most of my industry. I don't really shoot a lot of fly fishing. It's now mostly conventional. Right. But luckily, people are willing to fly me places.
Yeah, I mean, you're much more out in the water, Florida or something like that.
Yeah.
Than you are in a canyon shooting a river runs through it, which is interesting.
Or shooting.
But that's just the industry.
Well, I think the fly fishing industry, the industry wants to sell the dream of fly fishing too, which a lot of the time the dream of fly fishing is that like saltwater look and the blues and those kind of colors. And so I think the industry really leans into that. No matter if their largest customer base is trout. It's like sunglass industry. Their largest customer base is probably bass in North America, most likely, if they are a large company like Costa, for example. Right. Yes, their largest customer is bass. Their largest fisherman in the fly industry is trout. It is. But who do they market to? The dream, the aspirational, the people that meet their color palette, which is offshore blue Florida look. And that's where they're based, right? So it's just knowing kind of, I'll have 1 or 2 shoots in Midwest or Montana kind of area, or on the West in Montana. But a lot of the time I'm on coastlines or I'm in the South shooting, to kind of fit those color palettes for the companies. And never knew that was a thing until that started happening.
Brands love their colors. It tells stories.
Yeah. And they don't always want to shoot fall because it's very designated that kind of puts them in one spot at one time, and they can't use that imagery as widely as they want. So So yeah, and a lot of the bass I shoot a ton of bass, and I'm not at shooting tournaments. I don't do that. I shoot the commercial products, but I'll shoot a lot in the South. So we go from Georgia, Texas, Kentucky, part of Louisiana, and then Florida. Those are kind of the main players. And then we'll head up north and we'll do like New York or Michigan. And so not a lot of bass in Montana. So we don't really head west for that. So yeah, so it's interesting in that regard, but, I enjoy it.
Are you keeping up with your YouTube channel?
I am. Oh, no. I mean, I would actually love to do more educational components. I actually tried to launch a workshop right as COVID started. Unfortunately, we sold out 2 workshops in Louisiana for learning to like photograph fishing photography. And I actually opened it just for women. And sold out 2 back-to-back workshops, and then everything came crashing down. And I just really haven't had the motivation or time to be able to think about relaunching that anytime soon. I love the educational part. I love it when people want to talk about like learning about how to do something, photography guys. I just don't have the time. And when I have time, I'm spending it with my family, or I'm on a bicycle really out in I have like 9 bikes in my garage. It's becoming an issue. I have a lot of bikes.
Oh boy. There's a 7-step program for that, you know. I'll get you.
I know gear acquisition syndrome. I'm stuck on it. But, so I just, time is finite, and, with my dad just over the years really has knocked it into my brain that no, we don't have a lot of time with people. So I'd rather spend it on things that are either I'm making my income off of fully, or I'm getting a lot of value out of it. And YouTube, it was fun, but I actually would rather watch other videos because I don't have time to sit and edit the videos and do that. So nor am I great public speaking, for YouTube videos. I go like kind of monotoned. And
if people wanted to see your work, where are they going to go then? Instagram?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Instagram is not my portfolio.
No, it should be your fun place.
It's my fun place. So Instagram is going to be the most up-to-date and current. Haydahl Photo is my Instagram, my maiden name. It's the most current with like what I can share from other companies. Right. But I have a website that no one seems to go to, but every once in a while. But yeah, like as a professional, you should have a website.
Isn't it funny? But we have a website, but no, I look at my traffic. Nobody goes there.
Yeah, like no one goes there.
Completely
Listen, because
flooded.
I'm not writing. It's because I'm not writing blog posts for it or whatever. I am co-hosting a workshop this year in Alaska. It's a grizzly bear workshop. I went to it last year to, we went to suss out the area. And so there's that. And I've written some blog posts for that. That is Kodiak. Oh my gosh. Kodiak. Oh gosh. I'm losing my brain. Hold on. I will tell you the exact name of it just so I don't mess it up, because knowing me, I'll mess it up.
Well,
it
it's the dyslexia. Kodiak, you'll get it wrong.
I'll say it backwards and upside down. KodiakPhotoWorkshop.com. And, yeah, it's really cool. We went to suss out the lodge last year and the location and hung out next to grizzly bears, which was crazy and very outside of my realm of like what I do, but I really enjoyed the process. So this year we're going back with, full sold out group. And then next year we're booking for next year. So that's always super cool. But yeah, Instagram, and I always say, if people have questions other than what camera should I buy and what lens should I buy, feel free to reach out and talk cameras with me. But if you do ask me what camera you should buy, I don't know. There's so many cameras out there. I don't know you and I don't know what you do. So, but if you start a conversation, I can maybe help you with some information, but otherwise I'm Googling specs like you are. So, but yeah, I'm just out here in the industry doing my thing.
You're doing a great thing. Great thing. I am so glad that I was able to grab that magazine, saw your name, we were able to connect, because I love your work. I really, really like the way you put the viewer in the boat or next to the fish or in the moment. There was something you did where, what was it? I had written, casting for recovery. And you're with all these ladies, and it was just fantastic, and they were all happy, and you made these beautiful images, and I was like, oh my God, this is what we got in the business for. It was really well done.
Thinking that's like, capturing photojournalistic moments is just what I really try to do. And yes, you'll get your hero shots in there and dynamic looking imagery. It's easier to make dynamic looking imagery with a wide angle lens really close to your subject and a lot of moving parts like water and stuff. Right. But I have to say, like, I really hope to capture those in between moments. So I had a company reach out to me. They wanted me to create some images for them. And they had a board of images they emailed me of stuff they liked. And a few of my images were on the board. And one of them was me high-fiving somebody.
Yeah.
They loved how I held my camera and came through the scene high-fiving, because I actually genuinely get that excited for people when we're doing something where it's like not just our regular run-of-the-mill photo shoot, but maybe they just caught their first billfish and they are stoked and they are excited, and I will get so excited for them. And so I actually have a series of high-fiving people. I actually make a note of trying to high-five people while I take a photo of it, because it's a record for me too. And the company liked that imagery because it's like breaking that third rule, right? Like coming through the lens and adding yourself into the scene. And I'm not the first person to do that or make that up, but it's just like, I try to make a point of it to be like, if we're going to be shooting their genuine reaction, well, there's a lot going on and everybody's really excited and I'm just as excited. And you get like the best look from the person when you do that, when you're ready, like high five, and I just keep shooting. And that's the thing, is just don't stop shooting. Just keep your finger on that shutter and you're going to get great stuff. You'll make great content. As soon as you chimp, you'll miss something amazing.
It's gone. Just like that.
That's with that Fuji X Pro 3. The screen flips away, so you can't see it unless you were to flip it down in the most awkward, weird flipping position ever, and you can't rotate it or anything like that. So I'm actually looking forward to that, not having the ability to chimp regularly.
Self-control. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I really had a great time.
Yeah.
I love your work, like I said, and you just keep doing what you're doing because it's great stuff.
I appreciate it. And sorry it was so long and it was hard to nail this down and everything. It's fun. I love talking about it because my husband doesn't want me to sit and talk about photography gear with him. So that would be his worst nightmare. He'd be like, what? Why are we having this conversation? Like, he doesn't want to know about it. Like, he doesn't want to look at it. He doesn't pretty much know what I buy half the time. I'm like, no, I got it. Well, it's all my business money anyways. Right. So It's just really funny because I'm like, oh no, you don't worry about it. Yeah. So, it's nice to geek out with somebody.
Yeah, it's my thing, dear. Yeah. You just go over there and leave my box alone, and I'm just going to open it up when I get back from my trip.
Yeah, well, that's why I have a studio. So now it's all my things in here and whatnot. So
would it be classified as a studio or a man cave?
Yeah. So, it could be a woman cave. Now, I have a bunch of his fishing rods in the corner and I have a bunch of his tackle. So you can set that up because I like him being in here when I'm working and then I'm not editing by myself all the time. But I definitely think it's more of a studio space. It's got a feel to it of like artsiness. So, but yeah, it's mine. It's all mine.
Maybe you need a Wayne State hockey, trophy or something in there.
My God, we never won the trophy. I've got my diploma on the wall, but we never won a trophy. We weren't that good. My goodness, we were terrible. I have a world record in fishing, so I have a diploma of that up on the wall. And everything else has a story, or it came from my parents' old house, or my dad's skis I just mounted to the wall the other day. I used to ski on them, and I put them up, and everything in here has a story and a piece to it, and that's what makes it fun. I've had the space now since 2017. We built it off the side of our garage, and I can't believe I have this space. I'm just really grateful for it, and it's a beautiful space to work in. And I've shot some tabletop stuff for some companies, and I can light it and shoot in here when I'm forced to do lighting inside. But
I saw that video.
I used to print. Yeah. And I used to print, but this printer needs to go. And I offered it as a donation to the local photography school in Missoula. There's a Rocky Mountain School of Photography that looks like a pretty cool program. I actually emailed them the other day and I said, would you guys have any interest in this large format printer? Like it's great printer. Do kids print today is what I said. And they respectfully declined it. And I was like, okay, now what? It's not like it has great resale value, so I don't know what I'm going to do with this thing.
Okay, I know.
So
I I just had him on my podcast. He's going to come out in a couple weeks. Tommy, he's the university photographer for Montana. I'll ask him.
Oh, okay.
I'll ask him if he's interested. He's 35 miles a while away from you.
Yeah, because that's the thing is it doesn't really have great resale. Now, Walgreens has the same printer in it, and that's no hit on Walgreens. They just don't know how to use it, right?
Yeah,
but it's an incredible. Yeah, and you can run, you can canvas through it. I've done my own transparencies for light boxes through it. I have, it's a really great printer. I just find now when I originally got that printer and spent a lot of money on it, we're in a whole different place in our lives with the ability to print online. And I use Bay Photo or whatever, where they literally will ship it to you perfect the way it needs to be, or it goes straight to my client if I sell a print, which I don't do a lot of that anymore. So it's just taking up a lot of floor space, and I really want to put in a nice bookshelf to house my photo books.
Thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too, and thanks for reaching out. And it was a very lovely chat.
All right, next time I'm in Montana, I'm looking you up.
Sounds good. Yes, please do. Let me know when you're here.
Okay. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Jessica. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button and become a subscriber to the podcast. Remember, you can follow the Just a Good Conversation podcast on Instagram and find all of our past shows on the website at justagoodconversation.com. Thank you for listening.